From the last time.
I think there's another little one that's just.
That's
what really, that's the only.
yeah. They didn't capture your item. They didn't capture your so
I'm just making some notes on this copy so we can get them.
yeah, I don't know. I think it should be approved. Now I don't know what it's like.
I'll check with Christina.
Yeah, I won't make it.
Did you get two of these, or do you want one, Bill?
I've got a note.
Thank you.
Consult list.
Oh, hang on, doing that for next time.
Make sure that it's right. Okay, and then. That's really easy to fix.
Okay. I don't,
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that. I think it's more complicated.
Yeah.
I can hear you. You're just a little quiet.
And if I would actually sign it, and we didn't even address, well.
You're a lot quiet, actually.
Just tell me when we're.
Your last.
All right, everyone, welcome to the June 8th, 2023 VAR small meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slamberg. I'm the chair of this meeting. Board members present with me today are Bill Turner, Fillmore Wilson, Bill Huey, and Julia Martin. City staff present today are Linda Bennett, and city architect Tori Parrish is available via Zoom. I'm not sure if she is yet, but she will be. The order of today's meeting will be as follows. For each application, we'll hear an overview of the project given by city staff for the benefit of the. This will be followed by the applicant's presentation. If you are speaking as an applicant, please approach the microphone so that we can hear you and YouTube can hear you. And state your name first and last for the record. Anyone speaking on behalf of a project, so owners, architects, designers, developers, consultants, you should speak during the applicant presentation period versus during public comment. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time, but by custom, they do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by public comment. So I'll have written public comments I'll read. If you are speaking as a member of the public, please, again, approach the podium and say your name first and last for the record. And if you're a neighbor, please also state the address that you live at so we can take a note of that. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. Once we've heard from city staff and the public, the applicant will have a period of 5 minutes to respond to or clarify anything raised as public comment and then city staff comments and recommendations. Once we've heard from the applicant, public comment, the applicant's presentation will be closed and we'll move into board discussion and a vote on each application. Please note that the purview of this board is design and architecture only. Issues related to zoning, livability, lot concerns are not confirmed with this board, so it cannot be raised here. If you were a student, I don't know if I see students. If you stay for the allotted amount of time, then please, I don't know if Travis or Linda. Travis, are you going to be at the meeting this whole time? Okay, well, approach Linda and she will sign what you need. The following applications have been deferred or withdrawn this evening. Agenda item 4, 33 Poinsett, agenda item 7, 67 Hanson, and agenda item 12, 66 South. I think that that's all the meeting protocol, so we'll move into the agenda. Agenda item A1 is review and approval of the minutes from the May 25th, 2023 meeting. I make a motion to approve with one edit to agenda item 14, 199 St. Philip Street, that the votes were for and one against, which was Fillmore Wilson. Do I have a second to my motion? Julia, put the motion to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
None opposed, the motion passes unanimously. Agenda item B, 117 Alberta Avenue. Linda, if you'll give us an introduction and overview of the project, please.
Okay, this is 17 of Alberta. It's requesting partial demolition of the historic structure, including the front porch roof. And we did a site visit this morning. It's a category 4, Ladder Terrace, circa 1940, and it's in the historic materials demolition purview. I'll give you a brief, this is a context where the building is located at Alberta between Esther and Piedmont. Here's a front elevation of the house. And just a couple of context photos of Alberta Street. And here's a couple of Sanborn maps, 1944, 1955. The architectural inventory from 2004 from the Upper Peninsula Survey. And I'll turn, yeah. Is the applicant present? Come up. And there should be a clicker up there if you want to advance the slides, or I can do it for you.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Ranko, R-A-N-K-O. I am the owner and builder for the proposed porch. This will be our cover page of our submittal sheet. I have highlighted the awning over our front stairs leading up to our house.
You can advance that for me if you'd like.
Oh, cool, thank you.
You just tell me next.
Yeah, thank you. 17 Alberta, our scope of work is to partially remove our awning, which over time has kind of been a little bit of a nuisance, just because with the current, the amount of rainfall that we have, that we sustain here in Charleston, our mailbox is positioned here. It's kind of set up in a way that a ton of water goes down into our mail, and on occasion it does ruin our mail. Am I supposed to be saying this or?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
This is your time to present the project.
You get to tell us all about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Exactly.
Yeah, and so actually it wasn't up until last year and the year before, we ordered some food, and this is sort of what drove my wife to wanting us to design a front porch. Is we had some food delivered and it rained that day, and it's not the delivery person's fault, but they put it right here. I don't know if you can see that green. They put it right there, and it right from the corner edge, it just dumped into the bag and ruined all of our food. So my wife was like, "Can you reach out to one of your architects and see if you could design us a porch?" So last year I did file for a permit and it lapsed. I just got super busy with work, so I refiled for my permit, and which is brought me here today. I am requesting partial demolition of the awning to construct a 15 by 5 porch made up of conventional building material. I think we have chip and dale railings, tongue and groove floor. I think that'll flow really nicely with the neighborhood. A couple of our neighbors across the street, they do have porches that range from anywhere between 15 and 8, give or take. But there's the awning there. This, in my opinion, I just don't think there's a whole lot there. This little fascia, and then the shingles actually carry over from the main roof to the awning. There is a drip edge on the fascia. Doesn't do a whole lot, especially coming in all the direction. And next slide, please. This is our current floor plan of our home. As you can see here, we have our 15 by 5 porch, common groove panels, deck board. We're gonna have a continuous footer anchored into the stem wall of the house. We're gonna do some cute little bricks leading up to it, probably some Cherokee style bricks. We don't really know, but something that really, makes the house look good. And I think we have an elevation shot next week.
So just to let you know, you can certainly present on it. We technically only have jurisdiction over the demolition, so
Okay.
whatever you do in its place,
Yes.
of course you have to get a permit, but so you can present on it, but we can't consider it.
Sorry. Yes, it would just be the demolition of the little awning over the door. This would be the proposed elevation. I'll just make it quick so I don't waste anyone's time. We're just gonna do a cute little gable style porch. Brick steps leading up to it, and a little foundation wall, Chippendale railings here on the left and right, and then also from the side of the house. But aside from that, ladies and gentlemen, I think that was about it.
Thank you. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Good question. The new porch roof, the new gable roof, is it gonna land on top of the existing roof?
Yes, sir. I would probably take it up to the ridge beam, just because I think it would, from a labor and material perspective, and then also from like a aesthetic, I think it would look a little better if I took it to the, because we have such a low slope roof.
Yeah, that's a pretty low slope roof. I think your drawing indicates that the roof is has a little greater pitch than it actually has.
It did. I did catch that as well. It does look, yes. As you can tell, yeah, it's definitely much higher there. Our roof is like 4
Thanks.
Any other questions?
This is not at all, but I just am curious, how is your porch floor supposed to slope one way or the other?
Our current,
The proposed.
the proposed, is it's, yeah, it's gonna shed to the left and to the right. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Franco.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, we had no public comments submitted. Do we have anyone speaking from the public? Linda? I think it's Frank. Linda, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Linda, I'm prepared to if you want me to read them.
Please, Tori. Here's Tori.
Okay.
Here's Tori.
And first of all, I just wanted to say, I know this is a little bit atypical, perhaps unconventional, but Linda and I are pinch hitting this week. So if there are any bumps in the road, if you could extend us a little bit of grace, we'd appreciate it. We were not expecting to both be in this meeting this week. So staff comments for this one, the front door hood is one of the few character defining features on the structure. The adjacent homes on this side of the block are similar in size with similar fenestration and similar minimal front entry elements. Houses in the neighborhood feature porches that have been altered over time, including the house directly across the street, as well as larger additive type porches, which may or may not be original. And the proposed reuse of the front steps is appreciated. We are recommending approval for partial demolition to include the front door hood and the relocation of the front steps.
Thank you, Tori. Mr. Ranko, did you want to respond to anything in the city staff comments?
Yes, please.
If you'll approach, then.
Yes, ma'am. Afternoon, Tina. Is it Tina?
Tori.
Tori, sorry, Tori. Yes, I ideally would like to relocate the front steps, but I don't think it's gonna be possible. Just based sort of, I don't know if you guys had seen the steps. They're in pretty rough shape as is, and I think it would drive costs up significantly if I tried to remove each brick and knock the mortar off of it and then try to rebuild it. Because I know that the drawings did state to try to relocate those red bricks there. I don't see how I could do it without spending an additional for that portion.
Discuss it during public comment as well. Is that all?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ranko. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Yes, the little small hood is a character defining feature of the house, but I think with this loss, there will be a minimal loss. Furthermore, being out on the site this morning, it looks like it's probably been replaced over time. It may even not be original to the house. It looks like it's fairly new construction, especially the corbels. I don't have much of an issue with the removal and reconstruction of the steps. Yeah, even though it's become the policy of the board not to allow the removal of large sections of the roofs, street size of the home, I think in this case, I would make an exception. My justification is that, this little house, all the simple is never bad. It doesn't have a lot of notable fenestration. I think what's proposed will give it a little bit of presence on the street, so I'm fine.
I was impressed by the Sanborn maps, which do indicate that this little row was all pretty much like four sisters, and they each had a little porch on the west end, which all of them I think have gotten filled in over time. And I like how simple their facades are now, and that they're all the same on that side, just like they always were. And the ones on the opposite side of the street, I think almost all had a front porch extruded. So I actually think it's really charming like it is. That said, I agree with Bill that, I would not lose sleep about the removal of that hood. But if it were me, I would spend that money on a little pool or something, and maybe extend the awning and extend the little porch that you have and move your mailbox. And I just think it's really sweet the way it is. But again, I wouldn't adamantly oppose what's proposed. I do think the porch design could be a little more sensitive. That roof is going to be really heavy with the great slope that you're proposing versus the low slope on the main house, and the Chippendale railing doesn't really have anything to do with the neighborhood, but that's out of our purview.
It's, the actual demolition request is pretty minimal. The stoop. And I think it is character defining, and I agree with Julia that on that side of the street, they're mostly still there, but I also understand the desire for a more usable front entry.
Just think about a little pool. Get a little pool instead.
And we're good, we're encouraging time for pool. Just kidding.
Do we have some consensus on
I'll make a motion for approval.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for approval as submitted. Do I have a second to Bill Turner's motion?
I'll second.
Motion. Julia?
I opposed.
Bill?
Yeah,
Bill Turner?
Yeah.
Bill Moore?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes to the majority, and the motion passes 4-4 and 1 against. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Agenda item number 2 is 102 Half Spring Street. Linda? Linda, yes. You'll give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
102.5 Spring, it's requesting complete demolition of the historic structure. We did a site visit this morning about 10:09. This is a category 3 in the Canberra-Elliottville neighborhood. We have circa 1852, but we think that was probably for the main house that used to be there. This is the old city district, and I do know that this showed up on the same board maps as early as 1902. The 1888 map across the street, but not this corner. So anyway, a little context. This is the corner of Spring and oh, it is, okay, Spring and Ipswich. but Siders is on the other side to the north. Here's some existing site photos. Looking west on Spring. On Spring. Here are some Sanborn maps, the 1902. Because I looked at them just. Anyway. I don't think that's the right one for 1902 because I looked at that just briefly. And, I don't think that's the right one.
It says Avenue North on that list. 1902, one of the streets looks like it's Avenue North. That
Like
way.
Rutledge Avenue, and that's a brick residence.
I've actually pulled it up just like literally an hour ago.
It's
and that
a
was
different
really
spot.
Yeah, it's a different one.
Anyway, here's the 1985 architectural inventory card. Basically, it does mention that the little tenement house or service building is a two-story frame building with flat roof concealed by a parapet. Turn it over to the applicant.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darlene Jackson, and I'm an architect, an engineer, just the owner, and I appreciate this opportunity here. This structure was burned in Hurricane Matthew. That's when it occurred. So the main house, 102, was burned completely and collapsed, and the flames blew into the smaller house, destroying the front. If we look at the very first page of the assessment, that was second, I think that's it. It shows, thank you. It shows the.
I could there be like, I think it works.
Okay, so it shows that the flames totally took the front part of that house, and it actually burned through and up to the back wall, and then totally, and of course, taking the roof out. So what we did with this, I had an engineer, structural engineer, to come out and to look at the house to see if it could be restored. Initially, with naked eyes, it appeared that it could be restored, and the fire damage was the primary thing that we saw. If we go to page, okay, I'm looking at page, on page 5, there is a drawing, yes, of the original structure, and then that additional part in the back was the restroom. The bathroom there, the laundry room, was in the back. And if we go to page 8, this is the site plan boundary survey that was done with the larger house and the smaller house, which is over here. Shows so this is the hard wall of the neighbor. If you look on this side, that is about, in some spaces, less than 12 inches from the back of that house, and I'm sure when we went out and saw that, is very close to that. So what happened, just to kind of tell a story of this before getting into the discoveries from the assessment. So the idea was, I guess, somewhat idealistic in thinking that, oh, just go pull some of the dead wood off and restore it. And that was the original plan. So when the structural engineer came in, and of course we had to strip the walls, so to kind of get down to the frame of the building to see what was going on. So once we got down to the frame, we got out all the, the debris, the inside walls, sheetrock, and other supporting framework, so to speak, we discovered termite damage. Lots of termite damage. I mean, like termite damage throughout the entire building, other than the brand new structure. We had no idea. I had no idea that was going on. I had no idea that was underneath because the work had been done, but obviously it was covered up. Or we didn't rip down to that level to see the foundation of how everything, the old wood. So a lot of the old wood was there, and we could even see that at some point, some new wood was connected with some of the termite-ridden wood, which is horrible to say, along the way to give it some level of support. So just to kind of get to the meat of it, and there's a full assessment. And I'll just kind of give a quick little overview. So I'm just going to read some of the things from the report, just to make sure that I get it right. So the damage, although the fire damage is what prompted the assessment, other significant forms of damage were found to be present. Most of the fire damage was, as you can see, it's at the front of the house. But then, as I said, we saw the extensive termite damage. So this termite damage has compromised the structural integrity of the building. So it's a safety hazard. Now, that additional portion is a little bit more stable because that has a crown concrete foundation. So the way that this house was built was primarily through nailing, notching, relying on self-weight. The connection methods in poor construction resulted in excessive gapping and alignment of structural system components. When I was in the house, I saw the shifting, a cracking on the wall near the closet space where the hot water heater was, but had no idea that was the result of that entire house shifting from the foundation. So one of the other things that we discovered with the foundation is that the foundation was constructed with cement blocks. Now the engineer did not go in and dig through because it wasn't feel that the house was safe enough to go in there to dig. But I do know that when we had some of the work done, that we just had some stucco to go around, that some of there were strategic points of the existing, I thought, solid foundation, and we just added fill-in blocks so that we can have so we can have a nice looking skirt, so to speak, around the building that was made out of stucco. But the original block, the engineer, because of the age of the building, is probably just rubble underneath. So the foundation itself is not secure. As a matter of fact, if in one of the pictures, you can see if we get a side profile of the house, we'll see that the house, the other side, well, that to the find it. It's literally that side. If we can, I took a picture, but I can share this picture with you and I know we're supposed to have copies, but I'll share this picture so you can get an idea. It's the side of the house, that's a current shot. That's on that back wall. Well, from that back wall, the house is leaning forward. And the base of the house is slipping off of it's like literally shifting off of the foundation in the back. And you can see it clearly there. And even on the newer portion that was added, it's not even over, it doesn't cover the full perimeter of the additional part. it only comes out to a certain point. So, and nothing is tied in. You see? So, and unfortunately, and I know this, it's not tied together. There aren't any tie-ins, any connections between floors, the wall, the roof to the wall. There aren't any tie-ins and connections to make the building secure. You know, hurricane ties, they're just, so I would say by the grace of God, it's still there. And that, you know, and it's just the safety risk. I don't feel secure in sending anyone in to actually look at it or to take the steps up the stairs because of that. And of course, there's water damage too. But the primary thing that has happened over the years that was just left undone and hidden was just a termite damage. So, so the architect,
Jackson,
the engineer.
Technically, your time is up, but I'll.
Oh, it
I'll give you
is?
Another, yes,
Okay, so can I just,
yes, ma'am.
okay, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I had a time limit. So anyway, so my request is to have the building demolished. Because it's just a safety hazard. I've been working with the city too, and they're kind of wanting to give me a certificate to say, get it done, you know, demolish it. But, okay, so, so it's a safety hazard, it's a safety risk. I really don't even want anyone in the building. It just was poor construction, it just wasn't done correctly from the very beginning, and it was hidden. You just didn't see it. I mean, so really the fire ended up being a blessing because it required taking the walls down to the point where I could see what was going on, and I didn't before.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
So sorry. Thank you.
Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
The little addition. to
That was done around 2008, around that time.
Okay, so it's not.
No, no, and that's just like I said, it's the bathroom and the laundry room right there.
Can I ask how long has this property been in your family for a long time, is that
Yes.
correct? And since the fire, which was, I guess, 2016?
Yes.
What's been done to kind of stabilize and protect it, anything?
Other than what was originally done and nailing down some of the boards so that they would not fly off, things of that sort.
Mhm.
You know, we tried to, anything that was loose, like nailing down at that time, some of the roofing, that sort of thing. But in terms of working on building, that's it. That's it. I spent that time looking for many different solutions and avenues to move forward.
Questions? Thank you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no written public comments submitted. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Land Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC participated in this morning's site visit, and based on observations and review of the structural report, we are encouraged that there appears to be a viable path forward for preservation of this building. While we are not opposed to removing the non-historic rear addition, the original form and footprint is otherwise intact, and the engineer's report outlines a clear list of recommended repairs for this portion of the building that should be undertaken as soon as possible. Following fire damage several years ago, this structure has been left open to the elements, unfortunately risking demolition by neglect. However, it's not too late to save this building. Given this is the last historic remnant on the site that has already lost so much, its preservation is all the more important to the character of the streetscape and neighborhood. We ask the board to deny this demolition request. Thank you.
Do you have anyone else speaking from the public?
Good afternoon, Jordan Cooper from Historic Charleston Foundation. We are concerned with this application for demolition of 102.5 Spring Street. The application states that the majority of damage is due to extensive termite damage, which we believe could have been prevented with proper treatment immediately after the fire. We do not oppose the demolition of the rear non-historic addition, but we cannot support the full demolition of the original structure. We recommend that the applicant return to the BIR with a rehabilitation plan by the end of the summer to prevent further deterioration of the building. Thank you.
Do you have anyone else speaking from the public? All right. If you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
All right, this one has not been an easy one. Number one, the original house on the property addresses 102 Spring was lost due to fire associated with Hurricane Matthew in 2016 after several years of neglect. Number two, the immediate context on the north side of Spring Street adjacent to the structure displays change over time and includes the shared vacant lot, a shopping center building, and a townhome style apartment building. Beyond the immediate adjacencies exist many well-maintained Charleston singles, which are intact and grace the south side of this block. Because of these reasons, our recommendation is approval for demolition based on the condition and the immediate context.
You, Tori. Ms. Jackson, did you want to respond to anything raised in the public comment or in city staff comments and recommendations?
Just let me make sure, what
Do
Tori?
you mind approaching only if it's difficult to hear?
If I can get, Tori, if you could repeat what you just said, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't mind repeating. And actually, we have a slide for that if you want to go to it, Linda.
If you'll go to the slide.
recommendations.
Where it has the staff comments and recommendations on it.
Basically, when we look at demolitions, there's a lot to think about. And I wrote these comments up based on the immediate context. You know, one of the things we think about very heavily is context. And so what's happening and what changes have already happened around the property. And so I looked at that with the immediate adjacencies and also with kind of just that outer ring beyond the shared vacant lot. And this was really tough. And then we weighed that against the current condition and that's why we're recommending an approval for demolition.
Thank you. I have no comments.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you.
All right, the applicant's presentation and public comment is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and vote.
Start. I think it's a really lovely little building. I've observed it for years and wondered what was going to happen with it. And I totally understand that it is in poor condition right now, but I don't believe it's beyond saving. And I noticed the structural engineer at the end of the report said attempting to repair this home as detailed above will essentially result in the same outcome as replacing the home, just at a significantly higher cost. And, you know, so I don't think that is justification in my mind for approving demolition. I wish it had been tended to earlier, and it might not be as far gone as it is, but with the scale of that historic core, I feel like it really can be handled and preserved. And if anything, I'm more concerned about losing it because of the fragmented context adjacent. I think it's really important to keep that little piece, and I still miss the big house, which I understand was wonderful inside, and I think it could have been grand, but I would not be in favor of letting this little structure go. Yes, the bathroom addition is not critical to keep demolished, but the rest of it I think should be preserved.
I agree with Julia. It's a very interesting form. And to the same point, a great deal of the historic built environment on that side of Spring Street is gone, which I think, instead of encouraging additional demolition, would encourage saving as much as we can. The structure is in rough shape. I don't think there's any question that it's salvageable. I actually think the most difficult part of it is not the fire damage, but the back wall. And not because it's termite eaten, but because of its location. But it's it's a tricky little job, but certainly could be accomplished. And I don't think I'm in favor of total demolition either. And I certainly have no objection to demolishing the 20th century rear addition.
I think I tend to agree also. I have no issue with the addition. There's really no historic significance to it, but I too, we've seen buildings this bad and even far worse than this mistake. It's a piece of history, and once a piece of history is gone, it's gone forever. And with this being one of the last pieces left in that block on that street, I think it is important to say that these things are always tough. Going out to the site and not actually being able to look in a building, it's tough to judge it just by standing out on the street and just by going from the photographs of the structure. I lean towards denial of the demolition because I really do think it can be made based on other projects that we've seen on those conditions.
Yeah, I think a lot of the points that have been made or other board members are valid. And I guess the only other point I would make would be one thing that is important is context. And I think I've heard a lot of commentary about the uniqueness of this little building, and the context of the street would be lost probably forever if the building was gone, given the size of the property that it sits on. So I'm in agreement with sentiments of the board members.
It was number 9 Rose Lane. I don't know if anybody remembers, but it's just around the corner, and it was in a really bad condition, and it's being restored right now. And like you said, there are many other examples of buildings that looked hopeless, but with the right team can be brought back to glory. I'll just make a motion for denial of demolition of a portion of the building. Approval of demolition of the rear addition.
We have a motion on the floor for denial of demolition of the historic portion of the building, approval of demolition of the non-historic rear addition. Do I have a second to Julie's motion? Motion to a vote, Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill Huey,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor.
Bill Turner.
Yeah.
Chair votes to the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. For an appeal process. There is an appeal process.
Staff can.
Yeah, because this individual wasn't able to get inside the building, and getting inside the building is key. You can't tell. I'm sorry.
What is the appeal process?
If you'll push staff, okay, agenda item number 3, 71 Full Street. And if you'll give us an introduction overview of the project, please.
Okay, 71 Full Street is requesting a partial demolition of historic structure, including portions of the west wall, roof of 1-story portion, and removal of windows on west and east elevations. The board site visit this morning, 11/9. This building's not surveyed. It's located within the Charleston Village, circa 1880, and within the Olden Historic District. Sorry about that. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. I
Applicant,
inserted context slides. I'm sorry.
Well, that's okay, that's okay.
That's on me.
Slides were mixed up a little bit, but my apologies. So we'll just jump right into the applicant, presentation. So I will turn that over to the applicant. And there is a clicker, but if you'd like me to forward it, please just let me know.
I'm Nicole, presenting from Bow County Architects. Just before we get started, we kind of want to summarize what we are requesting. We are presenting the demolition of part of the structure. We will be presenting to BZA to submit, to request a special exception to expand the house and continue an existing non-conforming setback along the rear lot line. But procedurally, the BZA is requesting that we get BAR demolition approval first. This is a large lot. You don't mind.
Issues with the
Okay. This is a large lot. It's 6,117 square feet, about 1.5 lot size. And the place that makes the most sense to expand the house is at the rear of the lot. However, we can't go further towards the rear lot line. So all expansions must come outwards at the rear of the structure towards the open area on the west side of the property. We're requesting 432 square feet of additional lot coverage. 289 square feet of that is within the rear setback, which we'll be talking to the zoning board about. Majority of the special exception request is for an one-story open porch, and based on lot coverage, they are allowed an additional 1,400 square feet of coverage, requesting 33% versus the 30% allowed. Regarding the house, the original piazzas have been infilled and added onto are no longer visible in the existing plans. The western side of the house has been altered significantly over the years. We're trying to fix kind of all that's gone awry as things have been added onto and filled in throughout the years. We are proposing a change that would simplify and organize the side elevation to make sense of the haphazard additions and the infill that's happened over the years. Any expansion or change to the existing house will need to involve reconfiguring the wall at the rear of the property and the fenestration in that wall on the west elevation, as this allows the owners to best utilize it. So if you don't mind going one before. Just a quick history of the house. It's constructed in 1880. Based on the Sanborn maps, it was turned into a duplex at some point between 1902 and 1944. At some point between the 1955 Sanborn map and around the 80s, the original two-story piazza that goes along the length of the house has been infilled. You can see that on the lower portion in blue. Looks like infill, and then in pink, we're showing kind of the area that does not show up on the footprint on the Sanborn maps. So one story kind of addition at the corner. During the time that it was a duplex, there was a doctor's office on the first floor, an apartment above. I believe I was in the 90s, up until around 2015, 2016. The rear portion of the piazza was approved to be infilled during a 2016 renovation. And that was when the house was converted from a duplex back into a single family home. At this time, the current plans don't really reflect where the previous piazzas were, as there have been major changes over time. And then, if you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. In the lower right-hand corner, there were 1960s style windows that were on the east elevation. We have an image from the neighbor's house that were then changed into double hung windows around the 2016 renovation. Going to the elevations. That one would be great. Our demolition request is two-part. The first, we are requesting the removal of non-historic multi-pane and smaller windows along the west facade. You can see that kind of in the center of the facade there. These windows that we are requesting to remove are similar to the ones that were removed in the previous renovation and replaced with double hung windows. And we also are requesting that a window on the upstairs piazza be turned into a door. The second part, we are requesting the removal of a rear portion of the facade in order to expand the footprint outwards and add a one-story open porch towards the open space of the lot. The heated and cooled part of the addition will be studied and will be subordinate to the main house. Part of the requested demolition is the removal of an inappropriately detailed replacement that was added during the 26 renovations. And we would also be removing a portion of the existing rear wall to bring it outward with the plan and remove the second story windows. If you don't mind going back, I think storage page. One more. Oh, sorry, one forward, if you don't mind. The lower left-hand corner, you can kind of see that infill of the piazza that was done in 2016 that we are going to be removing.
Kate Campbell with Bow County Architects. Thanks everybody for your time this morning. Seeing this on site, I think just going back to the site plan, and procedurally, we are coming before you all for demolition without presenting what's proposed. And so just to from the utilization of this property, the natural place to add an addition to this house is on that western facing portion of the property. So there will be some sort of demolition that would need to be requested on that piece versus going back further into the setback, which we're already encroaching into the back setback as it currently stands. Also, we believe that the original footprint of the house most likely was the front building. If you go back to the side elevation from the original, or side elevation, that the 1902 Sanborn has the footprint of the building as it currently is with the piazzas enclosed. But I do believe that the back portion of the areas that we're proposing to alter were a later addition between 1988 and the 1902 Sanborn. So happy to answer any questions on that.
You had mentioned that you'd be going to BZA. What would that variance be?
And special exception to extend the existing non-conforming setback in the rear. Which we have talked to the neighbors and they're all in favor of it, and I believe the staff was also in favor of it.
I understand that's the easiest way to go, but have you entertained the idea if you're going to have to go for a special exception or variance to go backwards? I know that's not maybe not the ideal for the program. Go towards the back of the lot instead of going through.
Yeah, there's 12 feet of space, and they don't have a garage, and so that is a shed to the rear, and so they want to retain that.
And it doesn't show up on an earlier Sanborn map. No, there's no.
I'm not sure where. No.
Question, the window on the second floor, the existing porch that's noted to be removed and turned into a door, is that an early window or is it a modern window?
I would say it's probably original. Yeah.
It's original. At the very least, it needs to be repaired. There's a lot of water and air flows through it.
And there's currently a door from the guest bedroom on the front of the house to the piazza. And so one of the things we've been talking to Con about is moving that window to replace that door and then create a door on the piazza from the hallway, which seems to make more sense. But we would, if we can reuse the window, we would try to do that.
Questions?
So just real quick. So this drawing right here was existing conditions prior to
the piazza infill.
to
on
what's
the
been
back.
done now.
Correct. So if you
So
go to the
the-
next slide,
So that roof line was changed on the
that
back.
roof line was not shown correctly in that drawing.
It was not shown correctly.
Correct.
Okay.
So it's more accurate with what our drawing shows.
Okay.
And the infill was also not done per that drawing.
For that drawing.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Okay, we had 3 written comments submitted. And these appear to be all the same. So we had one from Rob, I cannot read his last name, but he's at 61 Bull Street, Barb Mitchell at 73 Bull Street, and Fred Mitchell at 73 Bull Street. And generally, these are in favor. They've reviewed the drawings, they've spoken with neighbors, no objections, and they support this in the zoning requests. So that is all of the written public comment. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Gordon Cooper, Historic Charleston Foundation. We have also been asked to read a letter from the Charleston Village Association, and I will read that letter following our position statement. On behalf of Historic Charleston Foundation, we would like to thank the applicant for their time at the site visit this morning. We have reviewed the request for partial demolition, and we are concerned about the demolition of portions of the west wall beyond the previously enclosed piazza. In reviewing the historic Sanborn maps, it appears that this rear portion may retain its original footprint. The historic west wall should not be demolished to widen the building, as it would obscure the evolutional footprint of the structure. We would also like to include for the record that Historic Charleston Foundation would be opposed to the outdoor entertainment pavilion and chimney and future applications as it is not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood and historic district. We respectfully recommend denial of this application. Now, this is the letter that was, so we were asked to read on behalf of Charleston Village Association. Dear members of BAR Small, we write to you today on behalf of Charleston Village Association to express concerns about the request for demolition of a portion of the rearmost addition to 71 Bull Street. Prior owners made a series of additions to the rear, some more graceful than others, of this simple late 19th century dwelling. The current owners propose to expand the southern end of the building again, this addition requiring the removal of a portion of an earlier addition. We acknowledge that this application is only for the demolition phase of a more aggressive reconfiguration. Our concerns focus on the additions proposed and the reordering of the windows in the west facade that will follow the demolition requested there. Most concerning to us is the proposed entertainment pavilion that will protrude from the house toward the west. Charleston Village, like historic neighborhoods across the peninsula, are characterized by the historic rhythm of house, garden, etc. The proposed entertainment interrupts this rhythm with a form that is not a part of the vocabulary of our neighborhood. Separate auxiliary buildings such as garages, pool houses, and garden pavilions are part of the neighborhood's vocabulary and have recently increased in number. The entertainment addition proposed for 71 Bull does not fit the pattern these new auxiliary buildings have established. A freestanding separate building would be more in keeping with historic rhythms and building forms that are important aspects of our neighborhood's architectural character. We respectfully request that the proposed entertainment pavilion be restudied prior to submission of a request for conceptual approval. We also respectfully request that the reordering of the fenestration of the dwelling's west facade also be restudied prior to a request for conceptual approval. Thank you.
With the Preservation Society of Charleston. The PSC appreciates the applicant's time on site this morning. While many of the proposed changes are concentrated in areas where alterations have already been made, the proposal to outwardly extend the rearmost wall of the west elevation impacts the ability to read the building's historic footprint, which is legible on the earliest Sanborn maps. The PSC is not supportive of this portion of the demolition request and also represents the position of the Charleston Village neighborhood, who were unable to be here but ask that the building's historic form be preserved through the rehabilitation process. Thank you.
Anyone else speaking from the public? George, give the city staff comments and recommendations, please.
All right, a bit of staff of context and analysis that, as noted, the portions of the project which are being reviewed today are the demolition portions. The timeline and logistics for the proposed project require BAR review prior to zoning. Then the conceptual design will be reviewed at BAR. The footprint of the structure is historic and nearly original with infill additions over time. And then we have some staff conditions for approval. Number one, demolition or removal of the horizontal window at the east wall does not cause concern. Demolition or removal of the three 1960s multi-pane windows at the west wall, the 1/1 window at the west wall, non-historic porch infill material at the west wall, second floor, and the door and steps at the west wall, first floor do not cause concern and provide opportunity to clean up the composition of the very visible exterior by cleaning up older modifications. Reuse of the 6/6 windows at the rear west wall is a positive, but the western wall is original to the footprint of the house and should be retained. Charleston's preservation standards state that additions and alterations to historic properties should be sympathetic to historic features and spatial relationships, and also should be clearly discernible from the old. Revise the demolition proposal to maintain or at minimum articulate the historic form. And then our staff recommendation is denial of demolition of the west wall as proposed, and approval of other alterations as noted in staff condition number 1 for approval incorporating board comments.
Thank you, Tori. Did you all want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations? Not at this time. All right, public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I don't have any issue with the removal the west side or the east side, with the exception of the rear L, what I'll call the rear L. And also, I'm opposed to those windows being removed, but more importantly, I'm opposed to the wall being removed. This house is it's lost a lot of its form over the years with the infill of the porches, and the L in the rear is about all that's left to it of the original form. It was mentioned that the L may not be original, but it's certainly old enough to have gained historic significance just over time. So I think that's sort of a moot point. So I would be in favor of everything on demolition, with the exception of that west wall of the rear L.
Just one clarification. It says it's not historic, so maybe it doesn't matter, but that little window on the east wall, you don't see that? I'm sure you didn't yet. I agree. Okay. I just want to make sure everyone addresses it as well. We don't skip over it, so that it's not missing if we were to approve that.
Probably pretty much aligned with Bill and the conservation groups. And I just want to say that the regulatory process is really confusing because what was proposed, I don't think there's any way we could seriously contemplate approving demolition. So I don't know, horse, cart, egg, chicken, I don't know what's the right way to do it, but so I think I'm in line with the preservation groups and with Bill Turner, just radically altering the roof line and the form of that rear portion. It's a little too much for me.
I'm in agreement. I would fine with everything that's been called out, but I would be opposed to demolition of the west wall of the rear portion of the house. And at this time, windows would also add, I would not support removing the historic window on the second floor forward porch at this time. If it changes and that comes back to us and there's a reasonable plan that would include that, that might be under consideration. But at this time, not knowing what the final plan would be, I would not be supportive of removing that window.
Okay, and that wouldn't affect zoning.
Anything to add? Comments that have been made, I think they're all good comments.
The only thing I'd like to add is helpful to zoning, and have is that, and unless I'm missing something, I do think as a board, we could in the future review the demo and plans at the same time. I think that would help instruct us, and just any approval would be contingent upon zoning, just if that helps. Please,
First.
Yeah.
Just in case they're not approved. So we've always done them separately.
Plans are ready.
I mean, up to the
So,
architect community.
in this area of town, especially for the one residence place. But anyways, that was just my only statement to add. May not add anything. Sounds like we've got some consensus though.
Does it seem like staff sort of outlined it properly? You guys think so?
Except for the window. I'm not sure the staff's got that window on the second floor,
Piazza, the original piazza.
forward.
Uh-huh. Okay, I'll make a motion for denial of demolition of west wall as proposed and approval of other alterations as noted in staff condition number 1 for approval with a board comment omitting approval of the second floor piazza window demolition. Sorry.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for denial of demolition of the west wall as proposed and approval of other alterations as noted in staff condition 1. For approval, with the board comment omitting approval of the second floor piazza window demolition. I have a second to Julia's motion?
I'll second.
Motion to Bill Huey,
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner,
Yeah, in favor.
Julia, yay, Bill Moore.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank y'all. Thank you. Thanks. Agenda item 4, 33 Poinsett Street has been deferred by the applicant, and we are on agenda item number 5, 150 Cannon Street. Linda, if you'll give us an introduction to overview of the project.
150 Cannon is appeal the staff decision, the denial of the paint color. Is Duran, Evening Harbor, DCR 066, and this is a category 4, located in Cannonboro, Elliottboro neighborhood, circa 1890 in the Old City District. Here's some context slides showing it on the north side of Cannon Street. Here's existing site photos of the building. And this is looking west on Cannon. This is looking east. Here's the Sanborn maps. The 1986 architectural inventory for this house. And now, move it over to the applicant.
Hi, my name is Katie Karrastrup. This is my husband, Charlie Rackley. We really don't have too much to say. We definitely do not have a presentation. We were not aware that you needed that. Essentially, we have been trying since March to paint our house Evening Harbor and have not been able to get approval. The justification by Isabella, I don't know if I'm saying her last name correctly, Bourdonier, was that it does not match the aesthetic of the rest of the block. What I said to her and what our appeal today is the aesthetic of the block, if you can see from the pictures, is washed out. The other buildings in our vicinity have not been painted. And her justification for it not being blue is that it was too bold and lurid, which I found, quite honestly, a little excessive. Also, at the corner of our block is what was previously the Gnome Cafe, and it is painted a horrific black. So I'm not really understanding how something like that was approved and ours wasn't. So yeah, we just want to paint it this blue. We want it to look better, and that's essentially it.
There's several other houses within
Yeah,
a
that was what I
block
forgot.
of our location, some including on our street, that are already the exact same color as what we're asking and proposing for. There is one catty corner to Gnome that is entirely in this color. There is 3 of them on the very next block with pure theater. There are 2 solid this color, 1 completely accented this color. So we feel like this would fit very well with the rest of the neighborhood. And as that block of Cannon that we live on, the only residents on that entire block that actually maintain our property and take care of it. It's an entrance to the city coming from West Ashley and from itself. So I feel like it would just help make it look a lot better and a lot nicer.
That's essentially all we have
That's
to
it.
say. Yeah, thank you.
And if not, then
Yeah,
a recommendation of one that y'all would approve for that block,
Yeah.
because this would be going on our 3rd application.
And like I said, we've been doing this since March, so we're kind of at a loss, and at this juncture, should this not be approved, we would need to know what colors would y'all approve, because this process has been tedious and it's drawing out.
We've been
So-
drawing out of the historic catalog, Charleston
Yes.
colors.
That's
And that's the only
frustrating.
colors that we have used to apply with.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I do have a question. Is it your intention, the application says to repaint the entire house in that dark blue, but is it your intention to have white trim?
Yeah, the trim that's existing in the white and black on the house will stay as is. That was just to give you an idea of the trim color will stay the same.
Okay.
And then will be the same as, basically the same kind of style as what you see there. Picture for an example.
Okay, thank you.
It's about bluer.
Oh, also my other question, did you wear those clothes like
No,
on
we
purpose?
realized
We were walking in and we
We walked
realized.
out of the house and I was like, I think we're like conjuring the blue. It's like, yeah.
Yeah.
We
No, we
really
totally
didn't.
realized, we were like, oh.
And we didn't see each other until 5 minutes before, because we were working, so I was like, well, I guess we're gonna be.
We really like blue.
Until we said looking forward to this.
We literally dressed for the occasion, not even.
Let's see, we did not have any written public comments submitted. Did we have anyone speaking from the public? Tori, if you'll give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I also want to just say that Linda and I are at a little bit of a disadvantage on this one because this is not one that we have directly worked on for whatever time period it may have taken. Staff analysis and context. The house is one of 3 sister houses. The proposed paint color is intense for the streetscape. Ordinance section 54-239, Article D notes that violent contrasts of materials or colors and intense or lurid colors as grounds for considering a design inappropriate and requiring denial or deferral. For this reason, we are recommending a denial of the appeal. I would suggest that if there is concern about the color by the board, that some direction might be given for the applicant. Thanks.
Thank you, Tori. Did you all want to respond to anything? And you don't necessarily have to, but if you wanted to respond to
Yeah,
anything.
I'm fine
Tori said.
responding to it. I mean, you know, to me, saying that this is too bold or intense for the block, it's kind of silly. I think, like my husband said, you know, it elevates it. We have several within, to the left of us on President and on Cannon in this color. And I mean, we talked to our neighbors and nobody else has an issue with it. They're actually shocked it hasn't happened. I mean, to me, it seems very simplistic and quite honestly, a little bit silly at this point. I mean, we just want to paint our house blue. We've been trying to since March.
And as a side example to go with this color, if this is too loud and vibrant for this neighborhood, I would love an explanation for why there is a bright purple house at 129 Cannon Street.
Sorry, I'm 45 Cannon Street too.
Is that the bright purple
I'm
one?
paying this house.
Okay. And then there's a lime green colored house on that same block, right across from it. And then a very dark plum purple house. All 3, which don't fit any kind of scheme with each other, much less any of that entire block. So
Yeah,
I'm
we're
really at a
frustrated.
loss.
If you think you should.
And we're not gonna leave it a washed out gray, white, faded paint color. we didn't pay that much money for a beautiful house to leave it ugly on the outside.
Thank you. All right, public comment, and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Just have a quick question, because Linda, is there a paint chip or sample in the file? I mean, we're looking at screens and they're never really quite true representations. Do you have anything in the file that you could show us?
I only have this.
Yeah, but
It's
it's
one
on
of those,
screen.
one of those Durham historic Charleston colors.
Yeah.
And we actually, I believe,
I brought in a
you
4x4
directly
foot
brought in
sample board.
right, that we had in the
Oh.
permit center.
Yeah, we,
I
he
thought
took the time to make the
that
sample.
was there. I've painted the side of the house, the 3x3 foot area, so that you can drive by, take a picture. I've taken pictures of it and sent them to y'all. I have done everything that y'all have asked to be done.
We actually have it. Linda's gonna go get it.
Yeah, I just want to see what the real color is.
Yeah.
Just because the vivid blue,
Yeah.
you said it was not
That
really,
picture
right?
came out way blue. I
Yeah,
don't
to
know
really
why.
see what the color is,
But yeah.
just to see the sample, that's all.
And this is technically board discussion, so.
Be right back.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said I could ask a question.
Oh, he did. He was at, Linda's gonna go grab the board actually, so we can see it.
Well, give it, well, good.
I believe this might be the same color that the house that we did on my street.
Maybe, and all of the trim is that color too.
Yeah, it's completely different color,
Right.
solid color. I think this may be the same color.
Right.
This is an approved color.
Well,
Approved
there's
list.
no approved list. That's a myth, right?
Yeah.
There's no.
Sherwin-Williams has like a book of Charleston.
I bet that
Yeah,
doesn't
but
mean that.
Oh, no,
There's some scary colors in it that you wouldn't want. But regardless, I'm glad we're getting to see a big sample. But personally, I am not concerned about what they're proposing. I think that's an especially dusty little stretch of Cannon Street. And I think it could benefit from a nice color like this. I don't think it is violent or lurid myself. I think it's pretty, especially with them keeping some white trim and the, I guess, black shutters. It's just paint, and I'm really not worried about that color.
I tend to agree, I think I've made my opinion on colors before. It's just paint, and it's reversible. Yeah, I think sometimes we worry too much about paint colors in the city. I would like to see more color in the city, personally. But I've seen houses painted this is almost a deep gray, in a blue, is what I'm thinking of.
That's what I'm wondering,
And
yeah.
I've seen houses painted like this, and they can stunning. And also consider this, it's a neutral color in my eyes. It's not.
That's one reason I wanted to see it, because I'm thinking the same thing you are. It's not vivid in my recollection. I just wanted to physically see the same.
And two things, I don't want to, disrespect staff, because they do have to deal with a lot of difficult questions about colors and everything else, and I'm sure they gave it a lot of thought. And then, no, the black building is absolutely not within the purview of staff or the BAR because of its age. So I know a lot of people were kind of upset when that happened, but that was not approved by us because it wasn't in the purview.
And actually, I think while I've been on this board, when we got the actual question of a vibrant color, it was a black house. They wanted to paint it black with yellow doors and trim.
Yeah. It's not.
Yeah, it is not that, that picture came out way.
Even the light.
Which is wild because
Yeah,
that
it's
house
not.
is not even that bright when you see it in person. But yeah, it's the one that you were talking about. It fits very, and the only reason I did the back of the board in gray was to show you kind of the surrounding area and how it would fit in with it.
Yeah, Bill, I think that's what I was thinking. Yeah, that same thing you were thinking, yeah.
Do I keep it?
Thank you for bringing that into us.
That us. Do you guys have anything to say?
Go back a few years and we would have brighter colors than that. Back a few years styles today, I think we would have found much more vivid colors on the street.
Motion on the floor for approval. We have a second by Julia. Put the motion to vote. Bill Healy.
Yeah, in favor.
Donald.
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner.
Yeah, in favor.
Julia.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, y'all.
Okay, agenda item. This is 78 Haygood Avenue. Linda, could you give us an introduction overview of the project, please?
Okay, this is a request for demolition of a portion of the existing historic roof. There was a previous site visit that the board did back in December 8th of 2022. And this is a category 4 Hampton Park Terrace neighborhood, circa 1917, and it's located within the historic materials demolition purview. So here's the location on the west side of Haygood Street. This is a front elevation. Not sure the direction on Haygood on these, but these are some context photos. Here's 1944 and 1955 Sanborn maps. Here is the 2003 architectural inventory from the Upper Peninsula Survey. And I'll turn it over to the applicant.
You, Joel Adrian. This was before you, months ago, we were looking to remove the larger portion of the roof. Circulation of the stairs up into that second floor addition. And this is really the drawing that you kind of need to look at. Hatched area of the roof overhang is what we're looking for approval on how to remove the roof overhang there, so we can put our second floor wall on top of the existing.
Any questions for the applicant? We have no written public comment. Do we have anyone speaking from the public? Corey, if we give the city staff comments and recommendations, please.
All right. We're actually referencing a lot of the prior meeting on this one and going with the board direction from that meeting. The staff analysis and context. Number one, the roof is visible in its entirety. Number two, the property is designated as a contributing structure in the Hampton Park Terrace National Register District. And three, while the proposal has reduced the amount of roof to be demolished, maintaining the full invisible roof form will maintain and articulate the original structure. A more appropriate addition would extend from underneath the original roof form and intact roof. For that reason, we are recommending denial.
Mr. Adrian, did you want to respond to or clarify anything in staff comments?
Sure. I understand that if we could hype it, it would be maybe more successful, but we had to get a zoning variance to actually push in the rear setback, try to get the amount of square footage that was needed. Purview is demolition and it's substantial because it's really changed the character of the house. Again, the fascia running down the left and right side elevations is continuous and it's in its entirety. The addition steps in, so as you're at the street, you still see the entire roof structure from front to back along the sides. And it is a section of roof overhang. I think the overhang is 18 inches. And if you go back to that roof plan drawing, I think that's the square footage of material we're actually looking through. Which is minimal. Might have been that entire structure. Obviously, the ridge line still looks like it's in its entirety as well. The removal will alter that structure to where you would not understand what was there back in the early 1900s.
Thank you, Mr. Adrian. All right, public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and vote. This was originally. There was no public comment.
Okay, no.
This was the one that originally the plan was to cut out. Like
Right,
meet,
we were taking a 7 by 13.
and this is our
area in
weird
the
purview.
center.
Okay, our weird purview area where
I'll give my 2 cents first. I do agree that hyphenating would be a more thoughtful approach, and I'm sure that it would be possible somehow, but just given the extent of our purview and some of the things that we've approved recently, like up on Upper Ashley, I believe. Pleasant Street, I think that would be reasonable to approve. It's a very small fraction of the original roof form, and to some extent it almost feels like we're being extra sensitive because it has a really nice roof material, which, if I'm not mistaken, our updated policy would allow them to replace with another metal, a non-historic metal. So I'd hate to push them because they do have a good historic roof. I'm okay with it.
We can't consider anything but the demolition, and we're not allowed to consider architecture, just the impact of the requested demolition on the historic fabric or its form. That is a very small bit. It's it is 33 square feet. It's 18 inches by a little over 22 feet. We've approved larger areas of demolition for the addition of dormers, and so sort of creates a dilemma because we have to review where it goes back. Based on the proportion of the roof that's being removed and where it's located on the building, I find it difficult based on past decisions to deny this.
I agree. I have no issue with it. We were just talking about that section of it, but when I look at the plans, and maybe I'm reading something no one else is reading. When you look at the, can you move to the slide that has both the demolition floor plan and the first floor plan on the same page? Side by side.
It's that other one, go back. If you're looking at the floor plan. Yeah, that's the floor plan.
What I'm reading is, this doesn't look like the sheet I thought, but anyway, I'm going with what I looked at on the drawings that were given. To me, it looks like a lot more than just the eave in the back. If you start on the northwest side of the building, it shows that, not on the demolition plan, but on the floor plan, that that wall from the window to the corners to be replaced with a new stud wall, but it's not reflected on the demo plan. And then the entire rear wall would be removed as well, accommodate the addition, along with its two windows and its door. And then if you go on the opposite side of the house, from that corner up to that rear farthest back window, it's also calling out to be replaced with a stud wall. So if I'm reading the floor plans, not the demolition plan, I'm reading this as removing the entire back side of the house plus a portion to each of the side of the house. So I'm hoping
I think maybe the applicant can answer.
Yeah, if I can respond. So obviously, whether we did a hyphenated addition or not, you're not going to see the portion of the back wall that the addition is hiding. So I don't know if that's really an inspiration. We are not modifying the side walls, side elevations, remain as is. The addition steps in at the rear.
So that's maybe a graphic error where it does indicate that the rear corners of the existing house are new. Is that what you're getting at?
Inside, or maybe outside, elevation, floor plan, period. But no. And that is in here. If you look at that floor plan, you can barely see that should be hatched. The existing house ends right here. This wall remains
It's hatched.
So it is. I'm sorry, but it's And see the note says extensive existing structure, and that should not be attached. Sure.
Cool.
Sorry about that.
Is the rear of the house visible?
We determined last time that it wasn't. It would just be those side pieces would be concerning, but that was drafted here.
The side corners are visible.
Yeah.
I would say maybe that would be a condition that just clarifying the applicant said that existing framing on the back wall is
Keep it all staying
staying.
inside everything.
Yeah. So, and I agree with the extent you're talking about. Don't worry. I mean, that's like the overhang of the rake and the thickness of the wall. That's it. It's very minor. So. Yeah, I'll make a motion for the rear portion of the roof to the extent shown on the drawings. Also, put into the motion the applicant's clarification that the rear framing corners of the existing home are to remain to what is shown on the plans. It's depicted and pochade as new walls. Those are to remain as existing walls.
Okay. Good motion on the floor for approval of removal of the rear portion of the roof to the extent shown in the drawings and the applicant's clarification that the rear framing remains as existing.
The rear framed corners of the existing house remain.
Okay, I'll go second. Thank you, Julie. I'll put the motion to a vote. Fillmore?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner?
Yay.
Bill Healy?
Yeah.
Julia? In favor. Chair votes majority and the motion passes unanimously. Julia. Agenda item number 7, 67 Anson Street was deferred by the applicant. We are on agenda item 8, 6 Atlantic Street. Give us an introduction review of the project, please.
6 Atlantic is requesting approval of 6 Packers plates to be added to the front elevation. This is a category 2, located in the Charleston neighborhood. It's struck at 1830 and located within the Old Historic District. Here we have this on the what side? On Atlantic Street. My directions are off today. Here we have existing front elevation of piazzas. And a photo looking east on Atlantic. Landboard maps from 1902 and 1955. Here's the 1973 architectural inventory card. We've got a little, sorry, I'm doing the applicant's presentation, sorry about that. I will turn this over to the applicant.
Good evening, Rick Rockwell, we're the contractor on this project. Russell and our team have been studying this building for a long time now. And so we've been going through it surgically, trying to restore it, looking at its structural concerns first. We have columns that were rotted significantly. And now looking at the masonry, we're repointing it, redoing the stucco, replacing the lintels with stainless steel, and Russell and I and achieve some stability with the masonry wall. We were looking at doing the scaffolding. I'm not able to install it easily because of the bow on the front side. So part of Russell's strategy and plan for to
space there in the middle where the row is the greatest. The corners, the city engineer or somebody at the city said that we should put it closer to the corners, but corners are where it's strongest. The concern for Russell and myself is in the middle of that line, just like an 1886 earthquake, the front facades fall out, a lot of the corners are still there. So we believe our analysis is and our preference for putting them where the red dots are. Maybe a picture showing depicting the purple ones that the city wants us to do. But we want to agree with that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
So the alternative to those locations would be further out and a third one in the middle.
No, sir.
You kind of normally sometimes see them instead of
Sometimes
under
see
the
them that
windows
way.
in between them.
That's not what the city recommended, that this is spread them out. They give me a
You probably, I mean, that's where the bow is.
correct. We're trying to catch it where the need is the greatest. It gets, the widest, the last at the top and then the bottom. But we're repointing everything as we go the whole way up and making this not go off.
Rods are tying
Yes.
into the
Going back into the four joist, that's right.
crossway.
36 inches back. No, we're going to do tie back, so we're going to have to block it. And they're going, joists are going east-west.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to, yes, sir.
The city, you mean BAR staff?
I'm not sure, Linda, do you know who said that?
It was just a recommendation from, and a recollection from a meeting, and I do apologize.
I'm not sure.
It was something that was brought up at a BAR huddle, and I'm sure Tori can weigh in much. That was my recollection. I leave it at that.
I've had a week, so.
Comments? Do we have anyone speaking from the public? Rory, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Absolutely. Again, Linda and I are a little bit at a disadvantage on this one. And you can probably predict our comments, and you may have already touched on that. The project is before the board because the property is a category 2 on the architectural survey. Number 1, typically patchwork plates are placed in a floor system as shown vertically, but between windows horizontally. Provide clarity on the proposed placement directly underneath and above the windows, or relocate if incorrectly illustrated. And 2, applicant is encouraged to work with staff on a decorative plate or cover. Our recommendation is final approval with board comments and staff conditions.
Thank you. Mr. Rockwell, did you want to respond to anything raised in the city staff comments?
No,
Public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I have one more question for the applicant, if I could. Would 3 at each level be more effective, or I'm just curious?
Russell and I did talk about that at one point, but our feeling was getting 2 in the
Closer to
bow.
the middle.
Yes, ma'am. I think he's trying to get 2 points of capture at each level.
Gotcha. Thank you. I will say that I appreciate how Russell and Dylan don't need last names. That's pretty cool. And I have to see what's proposed.
I mean, I think it's a reasonable solution. My only thought would be that those mattress plates shouldn't read like they're 150 years old. They ought to read like they're current. Whatever they end up looking like, they should read like they're current. I think it's fine, and I would defer to the engineer's placement.
Definitely.
Let's make a motion for final approval with the board comments not to present a false sense of history with the aesthetics of the patchwork plates.
Yield patchwork.
Right. They're proud new patchwork plates. Is there anything, I think we talked through it.
Yeah.
Oh, staff comment 2, staff condition 2, I guess is what it's called. Work with staff.
We have a motion on the floor for final approval with board comment not to do a false sense of history with the aesthetic of the new mattress plates and staff condition number 2. Do I have a second to Julie's motion?
Second.
Bill? Motion to vote. Bill Turner?
Yay in favor.
Bowman?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
In favor.
Bill Healy?
Yeah, fair.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. Agenda item number 9 is 265B Cumming Street. Linda, could you give us an introduction and overview of the project, please?
All right. This is a request for a preliminary approval for new single-family residence in the rear. This is new construction. It's located in Cannon Elliottboro. It is located in the Old City District. Here is a concept shot of the school location of the building, or where it will be. A picture of the site. Shot looking down Cumming Street, way on Cumming Street. Here's a San Juan map from 1955. I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, Cameron Glass, how are you? I apologize, I'm out of breath. The back doors were locked when I just came in, and I rushed around the front side, and it was a dead sprint to get here as the item started. We are presenting a landscape plan today that was deferred at conceptual approval of 265A Cumming Street, which is just to the south or photo left right here. There's the front of the building. Well, actually, the entire site, actually, there's 2 buildings proposed on 265 Cumming. So we are, Andrew was the applicant. My architect is out of the country at the moment, so I am.
Interrupt you to ask one. Are we looking at a landscape plan or
But it's listed as a
single-family?
single-family residence, is that? on
Yes,
the
so
agenda?
there are 2 single-family residences, one in construction and one proposed on the site, which is actually also under construction at the moment.
Okay, so this is mislabeled, is that right, Linda?
I think there might have been some kind of issue that it doesn't have final approval, right? The one
There
that's-
certainly was.
Yeah.
We jumped the gun and started framing on Unit B early,
Sure did.
about a week ago.
Oh, okay. So you.
Go ahead.
A week ago?
So what I'm not really sure because I'm kind of lying. I was on Monday or Tuesday. So I really don't know.
So staff,
Staff, maybe Tori knows.
well, staff was out posting signs last week because we were posting signs now too. And when they were on the property to post the sign, the front unit does have approvals in place. It's under construction. They noticed that the unit in the back, which we were posting the sign for, was already framed. And we had already, we'd worked with Mr. Glaus and we had a foundation permit only in place. And he was aware that we granted a foundation permit with the condition that there could be changes required by the BAR. So the framing is in place up through just under the roof, if I'm not mistaken. And that was last, probably Friday when we were posting signs.
That's it? Wait, is that it?
Just a little bit of framing.
Could Tori see the screen?
Yeah, that's.
I'm but like, is that, okay,
That's
but
the
is that the
approval,
front
right?
unit or the back unit?
You're not.
Okay, we're not seeing the
The right
frame.
unit. Yeah, that's the front one that has approval.
Andrew and I were both out of the country, and the guys started framing. You'll see a photo in a second.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I can see the screen.
You said we're seeing a
She started
landscaping
working
plan.
on their
So I think we were all sort of looking at each other that, wait a minute, I thought we were looking at form. So we're looking at.
That's
Yes,
the front
ma'am.
now. Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
sorry.
Okay, and now I will not take away any of your time. You may begin.
I don't need much. The deferral from last one was for 265B, which is the rear building, not the one we're looking at whatsoever right now. The one that stands there right now. There's a whole first story framed right now. This picture is a week out of date. So yeah, my guys started framing early. I sincerely apologize for it. I take full responsibility. That was on me. I'm sure I will incur a penalty or a fee or something for doing such. But what is being presented right now is what was deferred from the previous meeting, which was to look at landscaping of this whole parcel, 265 coming, to look at the hardscape versus greenscape on it. I think it was conditions 1 and 2, which both referred to the landscape and hardscape plan.
I don't.
But it only had conceptual.
It's not as any hardscaping or landscaping.
It was conceptual approval for the design, right?
So we got conceptual approval for the design with conditions 1 and 2, which were to present essentially a landscape plan.
And bring it all back.
Correct.
The landscape plan.
Oh, there is
There's
on the,
there's a basic site plan.
the site plan will, if we could go to the next slide.
Which slide is it?
Progress just view, these are elevations. Progress.
Let's go backward to the beginning.
Just for some clarification, this is a preliminary review, and yes, there were some conditions of approval that he's referring to that are in your staff comment packet from before.
We could reverse a few. There was a site plan back there that shows in plan view. I believe the concern of the board previously was obviously hardscape and concrete and that versus green area. So there is a slide that I saw momentarily ago that if we have it up, I can describe the proposed green spaces that we were deferred from to. Go ahead.
I'm just telling, it's right after the survey and the drawing set.
Oh.
There.
That looks
That was
okay.
it. Oh,
Yeah.
go back.
Go back one. Back one.
There you go.
There we go. So the.
Can you zoom in on that, on the site that's in question?
Yes, that'd be.
And then it might break your whole system, right? Sorry.
The parcel on the proposal is the horizontal parcel on the south end of what we're looking at. The dark shaded area is brick pavers. We've tried to condense the strictly brick pavered areas to absolutely necessity for vehicular transport. Even some of the parking areas behind 265A, which plan east, you can see the parking is labeled as gravel parking. The green space that has been incorporated by Andrew essentially lines both buildings with planter elements around the curved piazza 265B to the west, plan left, as well as several planter areas. 65A north of it. There's a large communal garden between all three of these existing and proposed structures right in the center there. And a few proposed trees, as you can see. So,
Can you point out the community?
I'd be glad to. It's right here. I mean, it's not huge. It's probably 20 by 20 full. But that is a proposed green space next to existing hardscape right there.
Two spaces over here next to those trees.
It's hard to see. It says gravel parking area. It changes the texture of the surface itself. From this is brick paved hardscape. This whole section is very dark shaded section.
So So is that proposed tree to be planted in the gravel parking space?
That is correct, yeah. The whole of the presentation is pretty much the landscaping itself, from the deferral of the conceptual meeting that we had, which I believe the tone of it was to propose more, or at least show the intended green space. So as we intend green elements, there certainly is, a pretty good swath of it for to be able to get vehicles back and forth. That has to be pretty firmly paved. That's your dark shaded area, but anything else that's not absolutely necessary, we are proposing either a more pervious surface like the one just to the west of 265 Ag, and planters all around the periphery of both buildings. So even though this proposal is only for 265B, which is the west building, we're showing the proposed planting around both buildings.
One other question. So it looks like the large area behind the historic building just hasn't been developed out yet. What you're doing with that?
This exists right here behind the proposed building. This is a grass and gravel lot at the moment, and that's proposed at the moment.
When will we see that?
We will propose something there at the moment, or it's in the future, but at the moment it's rented and leased by the ownership of the entire property for parking, and was approved as a gravel lot.
Ready for any other questions? Did you have anything else on your presentation?
Not particularly, besides what was pointed out, which is that we did jump the gun and start framing this building right here. You can't see it in the pictures. I don't think there's a picture of it. The picture that you did see of the, it's not just framing. We're well into 265 Ag. We have a foundation permit for B, 265B, which is, you're looking towards the north right here. So it's about right here. We have a foundation permit, and we sent our, it was a miscommunication. Andrew and myself were both out of town, and the guys framed for a couple of days, and did pretty well for 4 days. But this picture does not show. There's a whole first story frame right now. So whether or not that has actual impact on this proposal, I don't think it does. Besides the fact that I'd like to, admit that was an accident, and I did not intend to do that. Beyond that, we're proposing the landscape plan, and if the landscape plan is acceptable, I'd like to propose that final details go to staff for final approval.
Any other questions for the applicant? I know we've been asking questions, but. Okay, thank you, Mr. Claus.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we have no written public comment. Do we have anyone speaking from the public? Tori, if you'll give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
Absolutely. As noted, the first and second floor framing have been constructed and a stop work order was placed on June 2nd. It is understood that the applicant team misunderstood their approvals, as only a foundation permit was conditionally granted for work at this unit. Number 2, the drawings depict good detailing and quality materials. Additionally, the dormer detailing and porch column beam arrangement are especially appreciated. Preliminary approval with final review by staff of 4 permit drawing is our recommendation.
Thank you, Tori. Mr. Claus, did you want to Did you want to respond?
just detailed it more.
We can ask questions during work. Can you just respond or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments?
Not George's comments.
Okay, thank you. All right, public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and vote. And
I'm just trying to understand what we're reviewing. Because I
we are
would,
definitely reviewing for preliminary approval. Let us
for the building,
Yeah, the building.
for the building, but we didn't have somebody present how they address the points that were raised. Better about the building. That's what I'm confused. I'm just confused.
I agree with you, and what he's saying is that the only comments raised were about needed a landscaping plan last time, but
It's true that we gave him conceptual approval with staff comments about the site plan and about paving and landscaping. That's really all.
so that's what they've addressed. And so I think you're right, Julia, nothing really changed. There's more detailing to the house, enough for preliminary approval if you will agree, but.
During the board
Quick discussion or board discussion. You can continue to ask questions.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a disadvantage because I wasn't here when this was before the board, but this is not really a preliminary level site plan. I'm gonna call it a landscape plan because we're not supposed to be reviewing plans, unfortunately. But this is for the hardscape, and we should have pavement details, this putting a tree in the middle of a gravel parking space, that's not well thought out. This discussion of a community garden, we need more information on that, how the materials going to be. So I just don't think we'll be given very much information on the site other than the layout of it. As far as the building goes, I won't comment on that here, other than I think it's nice looking. But as far as the site goes, we're just not there.
With you. And I personally feel like the building itself is probably ready for final approval myself. But I completely agree that the hardscape plan and the site plan are not ready for that. So, or even preliminary.
You all probably, from a procedural perspective, is it worth it to get final approval of the building and then, but then it ultimate hardscaping has to come back?
I guess the reason that's why I'm asking that, because I'm just looking back at old motions here, and staff's comment number 2 previously was paving and landscape plan must be included by final review. So that's a condition. I agree. There's not enough information for that. So that's where I'm confused, I guess.
And even conceptually, in terms of the site plan, I think that conceptually it could be softened somewhat and still accommodate the 4 parking places that you are required to provide. I'd be inclined to maybe consider final approval for the structure and the plan.
It just needs to be developed. We just don't have enough.
Further clarification and refinement.
So the site plan will be coming back to us.
I kind of think it could maybe go to, you want it to come here? Staff. Here?
As a landscape plan. Site plan, but I would like to go back.
Okay, all right.
So did you make a motion for final approval of the residence and deferral of the site plan for refinement and detail? Is that your motion? Okay. Yes. Do I have a second to Julia's motion? Motion to a vote, Bill Huey.
Confusedly yay in favor, I guess.
Julia? Yay. Okay. Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously.
Okay, there's no more moment to respond to this. All right, for clarification, we're gonna be presenting essentially the exact same thing that we get deferred on. The building was, generally acceptable for the comments last time we were sent back for a final site plan. And if, I don't know if
There's no further time to respond, unfortunately. But we did approve, we gave final approval of the building at this point, so just the hard.
well, then for clarification, can we move on to permitting for the construction of the building itself?
You got a gift, you got final.
Yes, you got
Yeah.
final approval for the building, so you can,
Site plan on.
you just have to come back on the hardscaping. site
Hardscape
plan.
details, material,
Yes.
all the things.
Fair enough,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Maximizing green space, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we are on agenda item 1011 Lowndes Street. Oh. Don't worry about it, how much is it, so that we can do it. We're gonna do an introduction over to you, please.
11 Lowndes, we're requesting conceptual approval for new 2.5-story single-family home and renovation of existing historic garage. This is not surveyed, it's located in Charleston neighborhood, it's in the Old Historic District. Here's a context slide of the project on Lowndes. Existing site photos, lovely hedges. Looking in one direction on Lowndes and looking the other. A Sanborn map showing a garage in the back. Now turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. Thank you, Linda. Sebastian von Marshall, architect, 43 Broad Street, Suite 200. I'm presenting this project for conceptual review on behalf of John B. Murray Architects in New York City. They are the architect on this job. We are hired as a local consultant and as a local agent for the architect. Go to the next slide. The plat for 11 Lowndes Street, just a little bit of a backstory. A couple years ago, this property sold. The Dawsons owned the house directly next door at number 7. They subdivided the lot and sold the house and the lot separately. There is a historic garage at the back of the property that is the only remaining structure on this on this lot. Some historic maps. As you're well aware, this area of Lowndes Street really was filled in the early 20th century or early 1900s. Before that, it was the river. We have an old Sanborn map in the top left that sort of shows that, and the bird's eye view as well. Bottom right map, the 1944 Sanborn. You can see quite a bit of development already. A nice mixture of early arts and craftsman houses, neo-colonial houses of various scales and sizes and types in there. And then the 1951 Sanborn map next to that as well. You can see the property, and you can see the garage appear in the 1944 Sanborn map right there. And you can see the double lot with the Dawson's house already on it. Next slide, please. Some aerial images that show the immediate site and the building directly next to it. Most prominent, again, that white neo-colonial to the east, the Dawson's house. Next slide, please. And some existing context. The top left image is of the garage, one of the images of the garage. The remaining pictures are mostly the adjacent buildings directly across on Lowndes, directly next to the property to the east and to the west. There's another picture of the garage directly below the one in the top left corner. I apologize, the key map in the middle is a little faint, but I'm happy to answer any questions about adjacent buildings if there are any. Next slide, please. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the precedent buildings that we are considering for the project that's being presented. In the last 15 or 20 years or so, a number of these were built in the immediate vicinity. You can see on the convex map at the top, some on Gibbs, 2 blocks down from our site, some on South, most of them on South Battery. And they follow a fairly similar pattern. They're all elevated because we are in a flood zone. They're, for the most part, 2.5 stories, which is allowed by zoning in the high district. And they sort of have a fairly generally similar shape. So there's a significant volume, then they have kind of an addition on the side. They all have, or a lot of them have dormers or appurtenances on the roof that provide light to the half story in the attic. And some of them also have garages underneath. They're visible from the public right away. If you look at the bottom right-hand corner image, for example, you can see the driveway. You can just barely catch a glimpse of the garage door on that one. The yellow house directly above it, the image directly above it has a driveway and a garage that's visible from the public right away as well. And then the other thing I'd like to point out, because of the glaring issue of the elevated buildings, is the relationship of the houses next to them. Most of those other houses were early 20th century houses. They're not elevated. Many of them are 2.5 stories, but it's that elevation above flood that sort of pushes everybody up. In some cases, the eave height's 6 to 8 to 10 feet sort of above the adjacent structure. So that's kind of a pattern that we're working with and that we've incorporated as sensitively as possible in the design of the building. Next slide, please. The site plan for the property. You can see in the top left-hand corner that there's an old oak tree that is going to stay. In the bottom right-hand corner, there's another big oak tree on the neighboring lot that's going to stay. It's a pretty tight lot, so the house is sort of right up on the setback lines. You can see the existing historic garage in the bottom left as well. You can see the garage and the access to the garage. The doors themselves have been pushed back from the plane of the wall to further reduce visibility from the street. So the idea is you can see that there's something happening. It breaks up the massing of the building a little bit, but really those doors themselves are kind of pushed back. A big screen porch or loggia across the back on the ground floor. And you'll see porches above. Entry portico on the front with a stair that comes up to the porch there as well. Next slide, please. The first and the second floor, you can now see that entry portico on the stair that comes up the front, the big screen porch on the back, the garage in the bottom left-hand corner there with a cupola that's been added on top to provide some daylighting. I would like to add in that garage while we're looking at this image, the roof framing for the garage is entirely new. The brick walls we feel are original, and then some of the infill in the openings is new as well. So we're not trying to disturb any historic material in the historic masonry wall. It's really just the new material that's being altered and improved. On the third floor, you can see bedrooms, etc. Next slide, please. And then the half story on the top, which has one more bunk room, a playroom, and a bathroom, a mechanical access that goes through a window to a flat area of roof for the condenser units, and then the roof plan. And what I'd like to point out on the roof plan is the massing of the roof, because unfortunately the elevations again don't quite tell the whole story. But you can see it's basically hip gable in an L shape with a flat roof on the porch in the back, and a more or less flat roof over what is meant to look like an enclosed porch in the northeast quadrant of the house. If you go to the next slide, please. There's some 3D renderings. Oh, sorry, first the elevations. So you can see kind of what I'm talking about on the street elevation at the top. The center mass sort of reads, it reads all as one mass, but the parts on the side, they step back. So that first part with all the windows reads as an enclosed porch that's back about 12 inches from the face of the building, the way you would have had a piazza that sort of steps back a little bit from the face of the building. That has a very low pitch roof on it. Unfortunately, the line weight isn't great, but the roof mass that you see behind that is really much further back if you remember the plan of the L shape. You can see the front entry porch and the stair that comes up to it, the little portico. The image below that is the rear with the large screened-in porch, and then the glassed-in master suite above that, which sort of steps back from the side of the porch below. Next slide, please. The side facing west at the top with a large window in the stairwell, and those garage doors that I mentioned, which in plain are 6 or 8 feet back from the base of the wall. And then below that, the elevation facing east, where you get a sense of how that roof shape turns and becomes an L. And again, that enclosed that quote-unquote enclosed porch falling next to it with the flat roof. You'll see a great view of that in the three-dimensional images. And then you can see the cupola on the garage as well, and the new doors that would replace existing plywood really in that opening. Again, the historic masonry is all staying. It's really just the new openings that are being changed. Next slide, please. A close-up of the garage, you get a sense of, on the left side, the garage elevation facing Lounge Street, the 2 old garage bays, which have just been bricked up right now. That was infilled, that was done later, so we're proposing to remove those and add doors back in that look like garage doors. They would be fixed. And then on the side facing east, that big opening that currently has a steel header, someone at one point changed the direction the cars drive in. That plywood would be removed and replaced with large on top. Next slide, please.
About a minute left.
Thank you. And then the 3D views, I think, tell a great story in terms of the massing and how the building relates to the adjacent structures. As I mentioned, we are up a little bit. It is a flood zone. It's 2.5 stories. Our floor-to-floor heights are not exceedingly high. We're not, going above and beyond, but because of that initial story to get out of flood, it does push our eaves up a little bit. And then the roof massing, if you go one more slide, please. You can see, actually, let's better go back because 3D views are better. You can really get a good sense of how the mass sort of breaks up with the higher hip roof in the back, turning the L with some dormers, and then the flat roof over this enclosed porch area over here, and then the porch in the back with the flat roof as well. Thank you so much.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Thank you. We had no written public comments submitted. Do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Laurel Fay with the Preservation Society, Charleston. The PSC appreciates the applicant meeting with us to discuss this project. In general, we are struggling with the overall busyness and suburban character of this design. First, there are 2 competing masses on the front elevation, and we feel a secondary mass at the left side should be minimized and recessed to create a better balance. The roof line should also be brought down to differentiate it, and the details restudied to look less like an enclosed porch. The front stair configuration also feels complex and overscaled and should be restudied. The roof form is similarly complicated, exacerbated by a multitude of dormer types. We suggest simplification of roof lines and dormers, eliminating the elliptical dormer entirely. We feel that if parking is going to be allowed underneath the primary structure, it should be minimally visible, and the 2 large bays should be reduced significantly. The proposal to add a monitor to the historic garage is also inappropriate. This is the only historic structure on the site and should be treated sensitively to maintain its original form and character. Lastly, we are not supportive of the request to elevate above DFE per the BAR's design guidelines for elevating historic buildings, intended to ensure elevated building designs are undertaken as sensitively as possible to maintain the building's relationship to the streetscape. Thank you.
Gordon Cooper, Historic Charleston Foundation. We would like to thank the applicant for previously meeting with us. HCF has reviewed the application for a new 2.5 single-family home at 11 Lounge Street. The Board of Architectural Review elevation design guidelines were adopted to ensure continuity of buildings in the historic district. We believe it is important to consistently follow these adopted elevation design guidelines. The more we approve buildings that exceed the set DFE requirements, the more empowered applicants will feel to request elevations above these guidelines, and a precedent will be set moving forward. We respectfully recommend denial of the request to elevate 11 Lounge above the required DFE. We do not object to other aspects of the project.
public comment? Great, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Absolutely. All right, so I have a lot of context to share. A lot of it's based on zoning, and that's been a lot of digging around into the zoning code. But number one, the massing for the new structure presents a symmetrical 3-bay composition to the street with a wing that features additional fenestration. Staff finds this generally appropriate for the streetscape. Access to the garage appears to be well screened from view, but applicants should provide additional views from the street for consideration and confirmation. Number 3, a recent ordinance amendment 2022-181 allows for 2 stories over the FEMA freeboard first story. 4, interpreting ordinance amendment 2022-181, the main floor is not permitted to be more than the design flood elevation, or in this case, 2 feet over BFE for new construction. The extra 10 inches of height would not be permitted. Reading from that amendment, notwithstanding section 54306S, new principal buildings within a VE or AE zone and the flood insurance rate map may have 2 stories over a first floor structure that exceeds 6 feet in height, provided the first floor elevation does not exceed the elevation required to meet FEMA and city freeboard requirements. However, zoning staff have indicated that 10 inches could be considered in the realm of being at FEMA plus freeboard in order to give cushion to the requirement. Number 5, per ordinance section 54306A article 2, the Board of Architectural Review may permit an additional half story based on architectural merit and context. Therefore, a finding of architectural merit and context is required for the half story at the top. And number 6, ordinance section 54-306 explains that architectural merit means a project reflects exemplary architectural and urban design, utilizes the highest level of materials and finishes, and contributes to the public realm as outlined in the Board of Architectural Review principles. All right, some staff conditions for approval. Number 1, the piers at grade level under the front porch lean a bit coastal rather than the property's context of downtown Charleston. More substantial piers or more solid foundation wall would improve the elevation, especially since the windows at this level behind the piers are for a basement. Revise. Number 2, it is understood that the design flood elevation is 2 feet over the base flood elevation for new construction. The proposal places the first floor an additional 10 inches over DFE, and this should be reduced. 3, alterations to the historic garage to add a rooftop monitor and glazing panels do not cause concern and will be minimally visible after construction of the house. And 4, there are 3 different types of dormer projections through the hipped roof. Restudy to reduce the number of or to bring consistency to these forms. And for these reasons, our recommendation is deferral for massing simplification at roof and revisions to front porch base and associated deferral on finding for architectural merit and context. Thanks.
Thank you, Tori. Mr. Von Marshall, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the public comment or the city staff comments and recommendations?
Thank you so much, and as always, we do make an effort to meet with HCF and the great site ahead of time, so it was great to have some of this conversation going into this. A couple of things, I think maybe starting straight up with the height above flood. You know, of course, I completely understand the position of the board, the design guidelines. That's something we don't take lightly. You know, the comment about the additional cushion from a zoning standpoint, we appreciate that. That's not what we were leaning on either. Really, at the end of the day, what we wanted to consider was the height, scale, and mass of this building in relation to the adjacent structures and in the context and considering the precedent of other buildings that have been done similarly. And the bottom line is, you know, those 10 inches, what it allows the owner to do is it gives them a place to, for example, mount switches and outlets on the ground floor, which otherwise you would not be able to have if the design flood is at exactly the first floor level this way, at least if you can mount between framing members or something like that. So there's a practical aspect to that, but also from an aesthetic standpoint, the question is, do those additional 10 inches make the house too big compared to the other houses around it, or unusually tall compared to other houses that are built downtown? And to that, our position was no, you know, so it's in keeping with the precedent that's been set for other houses. So that was kind of our consideration, and of course, I completely understand the guidelines and certainly the precedent. I do feel like the project should all be evaluated on an individual basis and within their context. moving on, concern about the front stairs and the complexity of the front stairs. I think the Preservation Society mentioned that. I think they're happy to study that, but there's precedent, I think, to the city staff's point. If the front entry stoop ground floor was made more solid, then obviously you wouldn't see them. I think over at 1 New Street, which was built in 2017, there's a louver panel that conceals the stairs that go up behind the porch. So, I think there's ways to simplify that very easily and resolving concerns there. The visibility of the garage doors, we'd be happy to provide some more views and some more, we have a 3D model to show what that would look like on the street. Really, I think it's going to be pretty minimally visible. You have the tree, you have a neighboring fence, you're going to have the house. I don't think you're going to see very much, but if that is a staff concern, we'd certainly be willing to provide additional views of those. We thank the staff's observation, the staff for their observation on the model of the garage. And I think, let's see, was there anything else? The dormers, there too, point well taken. We'd be happy to kind of study the different shapes and sizes. The elliptical dormer is something that we are unusual. There's obviously precedent for elliptical projections from the building. I think Hugo Manigo did 2 Joseph Manigo House at City Hall. So it's not entirely unfamiliar, but obviously, if the board would rather see a more orthogonal dormer on that side, that's something that the applicant would certainly be willing to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Public comment on the applicant's presentation is not closed. We'll go to board discussion and a vote.
I think it's a nicely detailed house, but in walking the area, I walk this area a good bit. When you look at the surrounding context, it's mostly these simple colonials, and you have some other styles mixed in as well. But even though I think this overall it's nicely detailed, I think it's too busy for the immediate context. So I would like to see some overall simplification. I think in a different part of downtown it would be fine. I think just the immediate surrounding areas be a little out of context. I do agree with the staff's comments concerning dormers, making more consistency. A couple of comments regarding how the house sort of engages the ground plane. I'm a little concerned about the configuration of the front stairs and how it cuts into the porch. I'd like to see them pulled out from underneath the porch. I don't know, when I look at this, it almost feels like it's the impression that maybe there wasn't enough space to do a proper staircase. I would rather see a more organized staircase, not having it cut into the porch. Base below the front porch, you have these situations around town, but they're usually successful when they have a purpose and aren't just simply an empty kind of space down there. Introducing a door going in and out of that crawl space area, the garage area. Of course, secondary to the main entrance. Maybe it's paving down there, make it a useful spot, or just simply go ahead and closing it, making it part of the ground floor space would be something else. But I think that area needs a little study. As the project develops, we need more development of the site plan, especially the front of the site. When I walk the area and I look at the drawings and all, to me, this is going to be by far the largest structure in the immediate area. And it's at somewhat of a disadvantage in that it sits at the convergence of several streets, Lowndes Street, Gibbs, Greenhill, Limehouse. They all sort of come together there and kind of have this kind of large open space of streets in there. So this would be very visible. And so I am concerned about the height scale in that. So if there's any way to sort of whittle it
I think those were all very good comments, Bill. And I guess one sort of overreaching, having to do with the dormers and some of the other parts of detail in the conversation. To me, the design has elements that almost go to a higher sense of detail or formality, and then there are other elements that just don't. And it could just simply be not interpreting the drawings well, but the consistency of the detailing of the house, the interpretation of what I'm seeing on the drawings, I'm not getting it. There appear to be areas where, for example, a lot of the columns are well articulated and the detailing around those. The surrounds around the windows are very subtle and simple, and maybe that's the objective and purpose, but when I'm looking at it on my phone too, by the way. I'm not looking at phone calls or something like that. I forgot my my laptop, so that's why I'm doing this. The weight of the sills at the windows. I mean, this is a stucco on block house, and the sills is almost anemic. The detailing where the ganged windows are joined, it appears to be lacking details. It's almost a juxtaposition, and the intermediate banding on the house is fairly simple and plain. It'd be hard for me to word it in a way that sounded right, but I appreciate the fact that Mr. Von Marshall is representing someone here, but if Mr. Von Marshall had done this, I think it would have been maybe done a little bit better. There's a way for me to say that without saying the wrong thing. I think you understand. The height, it is a bit of problematic in the fact that it is just those 10 inches, but I think it's the overall appearance of the massing that I'm having a little bit of trouble with, obviously. Different ways. It could be just simply the roof form itself, or again, the detailing and articulation around the roof form. So the general plan, I think it works on the site. I don't really have an issue with that. The siting of the house per se, does take up every bit of the lot that it can, but I just think in that provision of the size of the house fitting on that size of property, the massing needs to be corresponding to that in a better way. You can't really have both. It's almost like it's overly aggressive site planning, and it's reflected in overly aggressive massing. Some degree of refinement, both in the massing study, but then also in the consistency of detailing would be something I'd be looking for. So.
I agree with you. I think everything that's been said here, I'm not going to add much to. I think that Bill is on target with the fact that the detailing in the house seems to be very inconsistent. It seems to come from a lot of different directions. Roof form, I think some simplification would help, particularly in the dormer styles. I think it can come down. So I think everything's been probably addressed reasonably well. I don't think I have anything to add. I'm in agreement with what's been said.
I have nothing to add.
Staff's made a recommendation for deferral for massing simplification to front porch base and associated deferral on finding for architectural mirroring context. Which I guess in a broad brush is what we're saying. Hopefully that's clear enough. I mean, we used a lot of fairly ambiguous terms here tonight, but hopefully we were clear. I'd be into that effect if you guys are going to make a motion for deferral for massing simplification. I'll just say massing simplification and revisions to the front porch space, associated deferral on finding for architectural merit and context with staff's comments.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for deferral for massing simplification and revisions to front porch space and associated deferral on finding for architectural merit and staff comments. Do I have a second to Bill's motion? Motion to a vote. Belmore?
Yea in favor.
Bill Healy?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner?
Yea in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next project, and, oh, I'm sorry, we're on agenda,
Agenda item 11.
it's all right, I'm jumping in there. Our next project is item 11, 42 Charlotte, requesting conceptual approval of conservatory addition and cupola for new duplex. This is new construction in the Mesique-Ragsboro Neighborhood Association, located within the Odin Historic District. So we have a context of into the site. Like photos of the house. That's looking east on Charlotte. We have the 1973 architectural inventory along with the 1985 architectural inventory cards for this building. Sanborn maps. I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Thank you, Linda. I'm John Paul, building art, and I was feeling you have seen this project before. We are here tonight for two parts of the project, which is the conservatory, which is on the far west side of the building, which has been simplified. That is in Unit B, and the owner is here as well to help clarify what we did there in the actual cupola, which you asked us to restudy. And if you go to the page, just start off and so just so that go to very deep lot. It's 254 feet deep. This carriage house type building sits at the very back, about 200 feet back. And if you go slowly go to page 16, so you start to see the plan. It sits behind an 1831, you go right there, 1831 house and kitchen house, both historic buildings that were restored by the American College of Building Art students and graduates. And if you see just where the tree is there, there's another lot that was in the middle, and then now our project one more here. You see it sits about 200, I think it says 197 back. You go to page 6, please. I think it goes to the elevations. So, yeah, here we one. Is that it? Okay. So previously, I've been before you because the whole idea of this project is to incorporate all the different trades of American College of Building Arts: masonry, timber, inside, plaster, and also our sustainability part of the school. And we early on started looking at how do you get heat out of a building. And the cupola, very first design was the one in the upper left corner there. You can see it was much larger. The structure was the same, pretty much the same size. From day one, they said, "Can you please try to get that down and back?" I think David said, "Try to make it be 50%." We went back and did studies. We looked at other cupolas. At the early days of our studies, which I have a handout if you need to see them, all the different studies, obviously 50% to me was more the mass of this cupola. The cupola serves a very important purpose. It actually opens and closes. It actually does what's called night dumping, getting all the heat out of the building. It closes itself automatically. The two of the sides of the windows close during the rain. And we had
practiced this on the front building as well. It actually has skylights, which you saw in the early phases of the structure to allow the heat out, but everybody seemed not like the skylights on this project. So the cupola was there already. I think Gilmore, you were the one at the last meeting that said I was not willing to take the cupola off because it was part of our heating, cooling process of our house. Got a lot of really unique, interesting parts of this house with its cooling systems. And they asked us to restudy it, not just in size, but maybe in shape. The one on the top was kind of a study. I know Tori was in the early meetings when we sat down and looked at maybe the shape and size of the cupola, but we had not found enough precedent here in town. You can go one more, Linda, I think it's page, actually it's page 19. So we found precedent now over on Elliott and East Bay. There's two cupolas there. They kind of sit right off Exchange Street. They're on very small buildings. So we went back. We basically took every meeting with you guys, we took our cupola and scaled down. We even put louvers on it at one point. And finally, I sat down with Tori and Kim and looked at all the different studies, and we agreed that 50% of size, volume was fine, 50% of the original volume was the best look, things like 51%. But 50% of the overall size, we have drawings here that show that, which is small. Will you go back to 16 again? I think it's on there, they stuck it in there. So there's probably 9 different cupolas there, and it's a little hard to see from there, but luckily working with staff, we picked the right one. We felt right, and they recommended the same. So that's a cupola. It operates, and there was concern, how do you get up there to clean it and do all those things? We have access to it. We have 2 of the sides open and closed. One of the neighbors is here, Ferris, who's behind us. We want to make sure that we can have a big light up there or being like anything to disturb the neighbors, although it's not going to be kind of south of it's also noted that in meeting with the fire marshals, you have to have venting at the ridge. This is a heavy timber structure, so there's no venting that can do as they do in fires. I didn't know much about that, but the cupola will serve also for that purpose. They can break that. On the conservatory, just to give you a little bit of overview, this is number 5, I think it is. We did a charrette with architects over the last 2 years. I always wanted the whimsical, more one at the top, actually the one even before the one at the top there. David Ringelson's here. It's actually his unit. He listened to your last comments, which were, you just get it simplified. It's really the only thing that you can see from the street. Everything else is pretty much non-visible. Part of the roof to the left of the cupola will be visible. But we've taken that down percentage-wise by 25%. Is it okay to turn it to David, or do you want me to stay on it?
Oh, absolutely. You've got 10 minutes, and
Okay.
you've got about 4
So
left. Anyone can
I'll
speak
take any
during
questions after that, but David's his unit, so I'm on the turn for a minute.
Thank you. I'm David Rinkelstein. I'm actually a public finance lawyer, so I'm used to presenting to civic boards, but I'm not here in an official capacity, here in a personal capacity, and this is my first time before an architecture board, so bear with me. But consistent with what John Paul said, we're, I think, on the 4th iteration and generation of what the conservatory should look like. When we started, John Paul wanted to implement some of his blacksmiths at his school, and we had a very elaborate kind of whimsical roof that you guys kind of signaled that you thought was too busy and too much going on. And so we basically have tried to come back to present for your consideration something that we think is way more reverent, shows a lot more humility. We think it's quieter, it's simplified. We basically have blocked the roof, taken the roof off in its entirety to make it just a more simple structure. So that's pretty much what we were trying to achieve, which is to adhere to kind of the direction that we felt you guys were signaling to us that you wanted done with.
If y'all have nothing else, I'll ask the board if they've got any questions.
Is it like a roof deck on the second level? Is that?
That's what that is. I'm sorry. I said yes. Okay.
Any other questions?
When you're going to drain that via scuppers? Okay. Spouts or any collection to that? There might be shown in this coursing. I
This is
can't tell.
conceptual. That's the conceptual, I think we checked preliminary, this is conceptual.
Okay.
But yes, this house has 2 cisterns now to collect all the rainwater, so we'll be collecting the water.
Okay. So, or meters would be probably more towards the rear. Okay. Thank you.
Any questions?
And so for both elements, you're requesting conceptual approval, is that correct?
Yes, and Tori can chime in. I know I checked preliminary for the cupola, but I think she said she was going to ask for both conceptual and what she says.
That's correct. I have the previous board motion in your packet if you need it, but the way I interpreted it, staff was given purview to work with the applicant for final approval of the main body of the structure, but the cupola and conservatory were to be brought back.
Oh, also real quick, can you elaborate on the, I guess, these are opening walls in the conservatory?
They're not. There's only 2 doors in the very front when you look down the driveway, and everything else is solid glass panels. They're to match, same panes, same window company, a metal roof, metal windows for the house.
Okay, so that's all metal. Yeah, I might be looking at the wrong page. I want to make sure I was looking.
16 will see, yeah, you're good. So all the glass panes are the same.
Yeah.
It's very important, the early design charrettes that this need to read, the glass panes should be the same, and the window company and the windows these are all metal, just like we had in the company.
Okay.
We're not building them now, they're going to be outsourced, but they're all aluminum.
Okay. Are all the moles and everything clad in metal as well?
Everything.
Everything's metal. Okay, so that horizontal, what is that?
From here?
Up at the, yeah.
Not here, no, we don't, right now it's wood.
It's wood.
We're going to develop that as far as material.
Okay.
I like the idea of metal, but it's reading right now as a lap siding, but I think it's going to probably end up being chip lap or anything.
Okay, thank you.
Public comment. Mr. Kaplan, I know we have a letter you submitted. Did you want to speak?
Not necessarily.
Okay, I will read your letter into the record then.
Thank you.
From Mr. Kaplan, who's here at 47 Chapel Street. Being the neighbor directly behind this dwelling, we were affected by all its developments. I'd asked for a deferment on this proposal since plans for the intended deck with balcony have not been submitted to the VAR or me. I had to directly ask the applicant these latest additions. We spoke about them Wednesday, June 7th in the morning. If there needs to be a fire escape exit from the second floor bedroom, then the smaller the better. Apparently its side will face directly into my bedroom and back to the windows, so we are not in favor of that. Perhaps it can be moved front facing Charlotte of the house. Regardless, it will be seen by surrounding neighbors and passersby from Chapel and Charlotte streets. VAR approved and wanted as far from us as possible and is limiting as allowed. No matter where, if the VAR approves, we request a screen, lattice, greenery wall, or if any of it is visible to us, since we'd be visible by them. And then we had a neighborhood summary of support. And it looks like there were, I won't read them all out, but there were 21 total neighbors along Charlotte, Elizabeth, Chapel, John and Alexander streets that are supportive, and this is as of December 2021. But I think that they went to the neighbors in April, July, October, and December of 21. And that is the written public comment. Do we have anyone speaking to the public? Tori, if you'll give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
All right, thank you. Number one, staff has worked with the applicant on the final approval of the main structure. This was granted in August 2022 and did not include the conservatory or cupola, as those were deferred for study and a later review by the board. Applicant has returned for review of those items. Two, staff has reviewed with the applicant massing studies of the proposed cupola. The cupola, I can't speak today. Cupola roof shape is appropriate for the design of the structure. Visibility of it is limited to minimal. The conservatory has been simplified. While elegant, it doesn't compete with the primary structure now. The correct position of the cupola is per the north and south elevations with the window panel fully above the roof ridge. We are recommending conceptual approval for the cupola and conservatory.
Thank you, Tori. Did you all want to respond to or clarify anything related to the public comment, staff comments and recommendations?
Obviously, Ferris and I are very close as neighbors and work together a lot. But he did not get to know about this until just the other day. I guess the sound of that. I usually go to every neighbor that didn't. So I told him I'd meet him out there, and we did. He's still on his side of the wall. I held up poles to show him the exact height. He wanted to verify that it really was 20-something feet back. It's actually going to be over 25 feet back. I told him 25. David has admitted that obviously he's a single man because he lived in Charleston. This is a door off of his bedroom. This is not going to be a public porch. And I try to explain it to Ferris so he understands that we're not trying to put a party house. I'm sympathetic to it because he's surrounded on both sides by college kids. So this will not be his, we're some 50 feet away from him. He's within 10 to 12 feet of neighbors that are bothersome. So I'm sure he's very concerned with that. And we want to be the good neighbors. So I said, hey, please just recommend that we put up some kind of green wall up there if that's going to bother you. It's anything that can minimize so that we can be good neighbors. He knows we've worked very close with him to make sure that we don't want to be disturbance anyway. But so I don't think there'll be any disturbance, but we'll do anything that he suggests. We want to add that into our recommendations.
Public comment and the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
I mean, I think it's, a lot of iterations, a lot of different things. I think the sizing of the cupola is very appropriate. I really love the idea with the functionality of it. I think it's proportioned well and detailed well. And then the conservatory, it's much more modest than it was in the past. I think it's handsome, and I think if it's done with those as described, it could be a handsome structure. So I don't have a problem with it.
Appreciate the applicant.
Yeah.
Asked him to do
Yeah.
last time. I agree. I really like that this will be useful. Did anyone want to make a motion?
Motion for conceptual approval for cupola and conservatory. Review by staff. And just note that we appreciate the applicant's willingness to cooperate with the neighbor.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval. Conservatory with final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Second.
Bill, motion to a vote. Bill Turner.
Yeah.
Elmore.
Yeah, in favor.
Julia.
In favor.
Bill Huey.
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay, agenda item number 12, 66 South Street has been withdrawn by the applicant. We are on agenda item 13, 170 President Street. If y'all could tell us that, we should go on, just got two more.
Okay, 170 President Street. Requesting after the fact, request to replace the roof, construct a rear addition, and replace the windows. The structure is not surveyed. It's located in the west neighborhood at 319 from the OC district. We've got a little bit of context slide showing the location of the building. Site photos. Site photos. Some views on President. And some different renditions of the building. A couple of Sanborn maps. And I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening, I'm Fernando. I'm speaking 100% English, so sorry if I'm lost on something. A couple meetings ago, my architect get the meeting with the bar. I'm pretty sure he worked hard to try to get all details like you're looking for. Try we get like agree work in this project. So a couple months ago, we have a meeting. It's like we get approved. So that you can help to show like the drawings and all story building the proposed. Pretty sure we give this like all recommendation like the bar say, windows, size, elevation, the like we talk with Mr. Jeff. So I'm pretty sure we understand because that's my first house in America, so I'm just do a lot. I say sorry. I'm excited because that's my first property. I understand is like you looking for a Charleston classic house, so I do so many projects for other person, and I understand what you're looking for right now. So I'm pretty sure I want to fix my mistake as soon as possible. So if there's something more to Jeff and I, that'd be great. We're happy.
Are there any questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. Mr. Guerrero?
Fernando, yeah, Guerrero.
Guerrero, okay, thank you, Mr.
I'm sorry, let me ask a question, because I don't think I was here for the previous review. Are you saying that you've worked to incorporate all the recommendations that came from the last review? Is that what you're saying? Or
Were changes made to the plan since the last meeting?
So Mr. Jeff, you do the new plans like right elevation, like for the bar. So that like I do it, you know, because I know about this job I do with my crew, so I know everything about the new plan. So basically we follow it like you approve. So the bright porch, everything like it is in the plans.
Three of us.
Three of us.
And the architect did previously.
Yes, the architect was here before, and going through the review I've done.
I agree, and the architect very much wanted to know what, he had attempted to put the house back together. And I think we only had a comment about the window and one other comment that he was fully willing to incorporate.
The roof is raised up higher and get down lower, back down lower, some of the windows.
That's on the list of things, but yeah, it looks like he's.
He was truly trying to put the house back.
Okay.
Thanks. I think that was the meeting, just the three of us.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I guess that was up to you guys. I'm going to defer to you guys since you saw it. Yes. No, I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Guerrero.
Thank you.
I don't think we had any No written public comments submitted. Do we have anyone speaking? All right. Lori, if you'll give us any staff comments and recommendations, please.
All right, thank you. Some context and analysis. The application appears to address all previous board and staff concerns from the April 13th meeting. The rear addition is visible from Bogard and the Septima Clark Parkway. The masonry wall is made to be more solid than previous. However, the height is reduced between the piers. Therefore, overall, there is a little change to that existing wall. And then conditions for approval, number 1, thicken the columns at the proposed rear porch. Elevation tags after number 37 were left off the pages, and there is an elevation tag for those columns, but I was not able to ascertain the actual size. They do just appear thin. In conjunction, provide piers beneath the porch floors for these. 2, for final, provide cut sheets and information for the replacement picture window, new windows, and hardscape pavers. And 3, add note to indicate the roof pitch on the return portion at the gable end, visible on page 26. This should be minimal, such as 312, or confirmed through photographs. And then with those, our recommendation is preliminary approval with the final review by staff of 4 permit drawings.
And Mr. Guerra, you do have the opportunity to respond to anything raised in the staff comments, but there's no obligation to do so.
I find it.
Right, public comments and the applicant's presentations now closed. We'll move to board discussion and a vote. I'm gonna have to defer to you all.
I'm satisfied with the changes that have been made. I think the architect he took everything to heart and he addressed it. I agree with staff's housekeeping comments.
From the initial submission, it was clear the architect was, he knew exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
If he's incorporated the comments, then.
There's one tiny little thing that I noticed, the zinc metal for the front porch roof, and it's called out as 2-inch standing seam metal roof, which seems like maybe a very commercial profile, so that'd be my only.
That was my one.
Really?
question. Is it the standing seam roof on the porch? I don't know if it's on the house.
I think it was
it's
shingles,
I think
yeah.
it's shingles. But it calls for 2-inch standing seam and a 16-inch panel. Standard would be a 1-inch seam and a 17-inch panel. So I would make a comment that the roof, standing seam roof on the porch should conform to historic dimensions. Other than that, I think that was the only thing I noticed that looked a little out of place. Like they put everything back the way it was supposed to be. So that's
Thank you to that.
very laudable.
Elmore, did you want to make a motion?
Is the staff's
Preliminary with final review.
Preliminary with your
final
comment?
review by staff.
And staff's
And
comment.
for preliminary approval with final review by staff. The staff's comments and conditions, and a board comment to ensure that the standing seam metal roof on the front porch conforms to historic dimensions.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with final review by staff with staff comments and conditions, and a board comment that the standing seam roof on the front porch should conform to historic dimensions. Do I have a second to Elmore's motion? Second. Bill Turner?
In favor?
Yeah, in favor.
Elmore?
In favor.
Julia? In favor. Chair votes majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Guerrero.
Thank you, good. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are on the 14th and final item, 102 Rutledge Avenue. Linda, take it away.
Our final item is 102 Rutledge. It's requesting Conceptual approval for a dormer addition, exterior stairs, and an extension of the roof. Not surveyed on the architectural inventory, located in Charleston Village, circa 1940, and located in the old historic district. Here's some context slides and the location on Rutledge. Here's a front elevation. Looking, I believe, south on Rutledge. Looking north. A couple of sandboard maps. Is that, anyway. I don't know what to be at.
Neil Stevenson, architect, representing the owners of the house and Hazel Berlin, their family has owned this house from just about the beginning. I think his grandmother moved there when she was 10. So anyway, they've been living here a long time, and they, a few years ago, they built an addition, and they've just kind of gotten to the point where they need some more square footage, so they didn't want to move. So we were exploring different options, and one of the most obvious ones was to try to get into the attic, and of course the attic is with a low-sloped roof. But the house is pushed back from the street, and so we're showing an attic that's on both sides of the house.
I can move it. I think we're having problems with that.
Oh, okay. Amazing. So you can see we're proposing to put the dormers on both sides. To capture as much space as we can. It does get close to the ridge, but could you show from the street view possibly? We have some presentation drawings that show the street. Well, there were, I think. Well, you can. Those are good. You can see where you can see the dormer on the side, and there are houses. Actually, the house next door is there you go. There's a mansard roof, so it kind of has the same little dormer feature. And you'll find dormers in this neighborhood all over the place. But anyway, from the street, it's hardly noticeable, but it is noticeable. And so it would be a huge addition to the family to be able to use that space. So that's obviously one consideration. The addition that they built in the back actually has a little roof deck, and they realized that they weren't really using it that much because they never built a stair to access it from like their kitchen in the back. So one of the things we're also proposing is just a spiral stair that you might catch a glimpse of down the driveway. It's way back there and it's not that noticeable. And it's actually kind of sculptural and nice. And then there's the extension of the roof, which I don't even think you can see it from the public right away. That is, that's one of the things we're presenting today. You can see there where the roof, they're extending just the existing roof, just extending it out over the porch, just over that roof deck, just halfway, just so that they can have a little covered area on their roof deck, which has been there already. The roof deck was on there. But that's pretty much it.
Any questions?
I have a couple. On your drawings, and it's just maybe the way I'm reading the drawings, but on the roof drawings, the note says roof to be demolished, and the entire roof is within that. Oh. So I think that's good. We're actually the plan is to leave as much of the roof intact. It's just basically extending. There'll be basically removing the surface and then attaching to the existing roof. I don't think any of the roof really needs to be demolished. It's just the surface of it where we're tying into it. The ridge is extended towards the front. Yeah. So that hip changes. So that would have to be. The hip would actually extend past the existing hip. Let's see. How about the front? Yeah, right here. The front is over here. Yeah. So it's in the back here. And so right here, there's this small roof. We would be extending that surface, that hip surface out and expanding so that the ridge actually is bigger, then it would tie into the main roof. So it's actually just extending the roof surface up, bringing the ridge up, and then just expanding that roof over the existing.
What's the purpose of doing that? 'Cause
You're just extending the ridge and then reframing the
front
face of the hip.
changing the slope of just the front?
No, we're not changing the slope.
Yeah, it's showing a, I have to use the word, it's a bastard hip showing on the front versus.
You look at the elevations, existing and proposed side elevation.
Anymore.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
That's where I was pointing. That
not
means this
45
pitch is gonna
anymore.
be a good bit steeper.
I'm just curious
It'd
why.
be just a face.
Yeah, it's not a 45.
And I think it shows up in the elevations too.
There's, sorry, that's just a drawing there. We're not proposing to change the slope.
Proposed side elevation. It shows up in the side elevations as well. Yeah. See how that?
Yeah, it changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like relative to the chimney, for example.
That is not the intention, to change the slope of the roof in that area. I'll have to take another look at that. In the back area, we were gonna just keep that ridge, just follow the slope of the existing roof.
That looks different too.
It pulls, at the rear, it simply pulls out. It simply pulls out, but it's widened as well. Yes.
So that ridge would, go up too.
So, what's the diameter of the spiral stair you're proposing?
We're trying to get as wide as we can, and we had to reduce it a little bit for zoning, but it's at 6 feet right now.
Okay, it looks scale-wise like really big.
Yeah.
Like, I think I wondered if it was like.
It actually might be a little bigger than 6, it might be 7 feet. We're trying to get it as wide as we can.
Yeah. There's not a dimension on it, but I was kind of looking at kitchen counters that are, 2 feet and trying to figure out, and it looks like it's probably like 8 foot diameter or something. Is it that big?
If we can get it that big, that's what we'd like to do.
Okay.
Yeah, because spiral stairs can be iffy.
Yeah.
For them to use that more often, a larger diameter would be.
I guess I was wondering because it's peeking out from the side of the house.
It is. It's by 18 inches, about the width of or the depth of the overhang. Yeah. It actually comes out as wide as the fireplace. Because the fireplace is sitting, the property line is, the fireplace is sitting in the property line. We couldn't come past that. So I think you're probably right. I think it was like 7.5 feet.
Okay.
Going out there, it looks like the main roof body is pattern shingle. Are those old shingles or are they reproduction?
Those look like they're old, probably original. This suggests that we just just do the same thing.
So you're saying that you would want to use the same?
Just in the back where they're not under the dormer.
So that, I mean, the hatches look different on even the front elevation from existing to proposed, but it's your intention to maintain what's there?
Yes.
Do you think you would be able to match that? Obviously around the dormers, there's a good disturbance.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's probably going to be impossible to actually match them right up front. Eventually, I guess,
What's the siding material of the two shed dormers?
Probably going to propose like a hardy or low maintenance, something that, and then painted probably the color of the roof, something that'll just go away.
One of the drawings, I don't remember which one looked like it.
It was, I mean, that was not ever intended that, it was just drawn that way, and then.
The roof on the dormer is fairly shallow pitch. Is that going to be, what's that material going to be?
That's going to be either a metal, probably a metal, or a built up roof.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, we had no written public comments submitted. Do you have anyone speaking from the public?
Society Charleston. The PSC appreciates the applicant meeting with us to discuss this project. Given this property is set back and not prominently visible on the streetscape, we see the room for the elevation of this building in the form of an addition. However, the original low-sloped hipped roof and diamond pattern shingles are very characteristic of this building's 1940s period of construction. Because the proposed shed dormers would require demolition of a large portion of the historic roof and result in significant alteration of the roof form, we encourage efforts to minimize the impact of the dormers by pushing them back as far as possible and reducing their scale. Additionally, at the rear, extending the existing roof line to accommodate a porch is not the best solution, and we think a lighter touch, retaining the existing roof form, would be more appropriate.
Go to the city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thank you, Lindsay. Staff conditions, if approved. Number 1, revise the dormer to be narrower in order to prevent altering the roof slope at the existing front-facing roof plane and to not overwhelm the existing massing. 2, the existing roof slope appears to be 812 consistently with the proposed revision to the front hipped roof plane to 1212. It is possible that the dormer may screen to similar roof slopes. However, staff does not support this alteration and additional modeling would be needed for study. Omit the change to the roof slope at the front roof plane, as this plane would be inconsistent with the remainder of the house. In addition, provide roof slope information and roof material for future review. Last, the slope at the porch roof planes are consistent with each other rather than dissimilar as shown. Update drawings to reflect. Number 3, while materials are finalized at preliminary, they do provide information on the general architectural direction. The renderings depict brick on the dormers. The elevations do not label proposed materials. Applicant to describe exterior of proposed dormers, including window type. Windows on house appear to be double hung rather than casements as drawn. Please confirm for board's understanding of overall composition. 4, concern exists over necessary alterations to the chimney due to the presence of the proposed addition. Provide clarity on any building code implications to the appearance and height of the chimney due to the proposed roof slope change and addition. Number 5, the roof form extension at the rear of the house appears to be original. Altering the form in such a way goes against Charleston's preservation standards, which states that additions and alterations to historic property should be sympathetic to historic features and spatial relationships, and should be clearly discernible from the old. Revise any addition at the rear to adhere to these standards. And 6, applicant to confirm existing roof material. I think I said that. If proposal is to remove all roof material and proposed roof replacement materials. For these reasons, our recommendation is deferral related to massing and to provide additional information.
Thank you. Neil, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the staff comments?
Well, you know, we were, this was really just kind of, we talked to historical groups, and we were really just wanted to get some feedback on the dormers, because I know that's kind of a touchy subject. Just good, because we're getting feedback here. There were some errors in the drawings that were caught. We're not going to put brick on the dormers, but we're planning on fine tuning all that. And I think that we're also all open to maybe rethinking the roofing system in the back over, which has less impact on the existing roof.
I'm the owner.
Certainly. This is your applicant response period, and you're certainly an applicant.
Okay. Edward Berlin, my mother was 10 years old when she rebelled. My grandmother and grandfather bought it. As I get to retirement age, I realize I can't expand the house. And both houses on both sides are dwarfed. A lot taller, and around my house, I've definitely seen a lot of construction. But I replaced the roof 5-6 years ago. It was asbestos. And they had but they took it, and we found those shingles that matched the existing roof. Those are just regular shingles, asphalt shingles. I appreciate your time, and never been to one of these, but it was definitely very professional run meeting. And I'm happy to be here. This is a pleasure. That's the first part.
Thank you, Mr. Berlin.
You're welcome.
All right, public comment in the applicant's presentation is now closed. We'll move into board discussion and a vote.
And I feel like staff, all of the concerns I would have had, I agree with staff comments and recommendations, and would just add a note about the spiral stair, which is like monumental.
Yeah, I don't think you could get one fabricated that big. That would be almost impossible to engineer that big around. I'm hoping in that might tuck it back actually behind the corner of the house, so you really wouldn't even see it. That's the main reason I brought that up.
Yeah, covered all the comments I had.
I think that it seems staff's recommendation is good, because I think Neil was saying there's some graphic things he wants to clean up anyway and add some notes and do some other things. So I think I would go ahead and forward a motion per what staff's recommended. Deferral, read it properly off there. Deferral related to massing and to provide additional information.
With add to an add your comment.
With staff comments and a board comment that the applicant restudy the diameter of the spiral stair.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for deferral related to massing and to provide additional information with staff comments and a board comment. Stair, Julie, do you use that motion? Put the motion to a vote. Fillmore?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Turner?
Yeah, in favor.
Bill Dewey?
Yeah, in favor.
Julia?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes majority, and the motion passes unanimously. That brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second to Bill's motion? Fillmore, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No opposed. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Good seeing you.
Yeah, good to see you, man.
you've used the reference to Bastard Hip Roof on one other meeting. I was having deja vu. I Googled this before.
Yeah.
Compound.
Something came up,
This is
right?
2 years ago or something. I was
Yeah.
like, I remember thinking,
If you look at a plan,
Thanks, Dory.
usually that
Thank you
45
all. Good night. Thanks so much for your time.
And see you in the
morning for our huddle.
When that angle is not 45 anymore, it means there's a steeper slope going into a shallower
so that's
slope.
the Bastard.
It's
That's the bastard, because they would call those, like,
different.
every rafter, they have to measure and cut each
Yeah.
one.
Crazy.
And I guess it's just a bastard.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know why they call it that. Fillmore might know. It's contractor
Because
lore.
it's not legitimate.
That's the way I was taught by framers, old school framers that,
It didn't come from.
yeah.
I actually think if you look at the way that roof was designed, the label on the roof drawing is correct. Demolish the roof.
Yeah.
Linda, did you bring recusal forms with you?
I did not, and thank you so much.
Well,
I will,
just email one
I
to
will
Lindsay,
email one to Julia.
and she can scan it in.
And then
Recusal form.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Everybody have a,
Have a good one.
You good? I'm gonna take
Yeah.
a good old
and Julia, I mean, Lindsay, we have a BAR application for 102 Rutledge. So I'll fill that out. I've got the notes. I'll fill that out.
And I've got
Yes.
Send it to me. Okay?
And yeah,
And I'll get you a recusal form.
Thank you.
Excellent. I don't know if
The
Tori's
first-
still there, but
first thing I
excellent
noticed was
job. I thought we
Can
did
be-
great.
Well, I
Don't ever apologize for
I
not
was gonna
getting
go home and
information.
brush and let the dog out and get new shoes, but I didn't get quite that far. So, anyway, thank you. I told Miss Erin, I said hello. Thank you, everybody. Let's see, I gotta close up.
We're leaving all these here.
Yes, please do, and I will recycle all of that upstairs when I take everything up, okay? And thank you so much, Lindsay.
Linda,
Yes, sir.
what are you doing tomorrow?
Have a good weekend.
I'm working at the permit center until 11:30.
You wanna go to lunch tomorrow?
Sure.
All right, I'll meet you at, what, 11:30 Permit Center? or-
Yeah, 11:30 at the permit center. That would be great, but don't forget to flirt with Franchetta, because she will have my head if you don't. Tell hello to Linda for me.
I will.
All right, Linda, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Bill.
Night. Good job, Linda.
Don't you know I didn't sleep last night? I was tired. I'd gone to my class and I just couldn't fall asleep. I think I was just nervous. So, I hope I didn't sound, yeah, and I'm just embarrassed that I have dirty tennis shoes on, but Lawrence and I did, after we saw you guys at Lawrence, I had to make some agenda changes for large, and then Lawrence and I went and did posting for large. So we don't have a person right now. So anyway, well, listen, tomorrow would be lovely. I don't know how I got this turned off.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay, take care. Thanks for everything.